Cid is an ugly, disgusting loser who wanted to become a superhero, and ended up being a more darker version of Batman, but he realized that no matter how hard he tries, he can never become Superman, and he will just vaporized if he gets attacked by Nuke. However, he gets isekai'd to a world full of magic where he overcomes his limitation, becoming more powerful than a Nuke, and creating the ultimate harem. The story begins with a girl named Nishino, who is waking up by the sound of an alarm, and after showing viewers some good time, she gets ready for school. As she opens the door, she gets scared by remembering something scary from her past. The driver calls her back to reality, and takes her to school in a fancy car. When she arrives at school, everyone greets her. On the way she meets Cid Kageno, but she doesn't really like him. He's just an average guy, who always says her name wrong, and doesn't give her the attention like the rest of students. She tries to correct him when he calls her wrong name, but he looks at other things when they talk. Even though the attention queen is cursing him in her mind, she keeps her cool. After that, Nishino talks about her past. When she was in middle school she had to take a break from the showbiz because of a scandal related to her kidnapping. Ever since that incident, she's been wearing a mask in public to hide her true self. When school ends, she calls her driver, but he doesn't answer, and we see some guys beating him up. After waiting for a long time, Nishino decides to walk home alone because she still hasn't learned her lesson after being kidnapped for the first time. On her way she meets the same guys, and they kidnap her for ransom money. Cid sees this from far away, but he doesn't help her during the abduction. They take her to their hideout. One of the kidnappers tries to give her the taste of his Excalibur, and Nishino has flashbacks of her previous kidnapping. Meanwhile, Cid, wearing a green mask, crashes through the ceiling. He introduces himself as a stylish ruffian slayer. He beats one kidnapper easily, but the other is tougher, he is an ex-military. But Cid is confident in his skills, and they get into battle mode. Using his crowbar he starts to overpower the soldier. When he tries to reach his gun, Cid stops him, and breaks his hand and leg. Even though he has won, he continues to beat him to a pulp, and we have ourselves an MC with questionable morals.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
After that he frees Nishino, and tells her to be more careful next time. He goes away before she sees him properly. Cid is upset about how the fight went, because his current level is not enough to become the Eminence in Shadows, not sure what he meant but it's the name of this show. Later, Nishino called the police, and her dad pulled some strings and the incident never went public, nor did she find out who the masked man was. The next day, she greets everyone like usual, and she meets Cid again, but this time he gets her name correct. She thinks that he is also wearing a mask to hide his true self, just like her. The following day, we learn that Cid was run over by a truck, and died last night. We are then shown a younger version of Cid, where he mentions that like most children he also wanted to become a hero, but unlike other children he continued pursuing that dream, and learned many skills that needed to make him stronger. But no matter how many skills he learns he can never get the overwhelming power, even if he becomes the world's greatest martial artist, there is nothing he could do if a nuke were to drop. He desires to overcome these limits, and become a being that even a nuclear weapon can't destroy. The scene then shifts, where it's shown that he has finally achieved his dream, where he has created a harem, and became the Eminence in the Shadow. We learn that, after he got wasted by Truck Kuan, he was reincarnated into a new world as the son of Baron Kageno. Unlike his previous world, this world is filled with magic. For generations, his family has produced dark knights, and they have high hopes for his older sister, who is a pro in several martial arts skills. Cid, on the other hand, strives to remain a background character. However, in secret, he is a master of martial arts and magic, and he slays bandits like a true psycho MC. He has mastered the use of slimes, and he uses them as a body suit and weapon to defeat his enemies. He robs a caravan of art, food, and wealth using his super slimy bodysuit. He notices a cage with a half-alive corpse that is trying to escape. He realizes that it is possessed and emits powerful magic, so he decides to experiment with it. After 1 month, he is able to contain its magic, and surprisingly, it transforms into a beautiful girl.
Yeah, boy.
He decides to put on a show and introduces himself as Shadow. He makes up a fake story about an evil group that twisted the history of the dying demon's curse to all the hero's descendants, turning them into possessed people. When she asks about the name of the group, he comes up with a random name and calls it the Cult of Diablos. He names the girl Alpha and gives her a slime suit. She offers herself to him and vows to eliminate the Cult of Diablos. She suggests that they find other descendants and make them join their team, and Cid wonders if this was a mistake. He agrees with her and decides to call their team Shadow Garden. Some time passes, and we see Cid training with his sister, Claire. Although he could defeat her in a second, he intentionally loses to her, and his sister thinks that he is an ultimate loser who never levels up. His sister has turned 15, and she has to join the Midgar Academy for Dark Nights as per the family tradition. However, on the day of her departure, she goes missing from her room. Her family wonders how she got defeated, and worries for her. Cid learns from his new member Beta that Alpha is already looking into his sister's abduction. They suspect that his sister is perhaps one of the hero's descendants, and the devils don't want her to join the academy. They are trying to find out the possible hideouts where they keep his sister. Cid puts on an act and throws a slime knife onto the map. Although it missed his intended spot, he acts cool and mentions that they will find her there. Beta realizes that there is nothing on that spot, and it could be their potential hideout. Meanwhile, we see Cid's sister locked in a cell with magic sealing chains. The kidnapper inquires about her being possessed, and being cured by his brother, but she mentions that it's just a rumor, and his brother is a loser. But the kidnapper is curious, and intends to take her brother as well, which makes her furious. Just then, Alpha and her team arrive there, and a battle ensues. The kidnapper starts to lose, but he takes in some steroids and starts attacking again. However, this was not enough, and he sneaks out. On his way, he meets Cid, who was lost in the hideout. He underestimates him by seeing him alone and starts attacking. But unfortunately for him, the overpowered Psycho MC criticizes his moves and use of magic and easily defeats him. But the kidnapper devours some more steroids, and becomes more powerful. However, it's still not enough, and he gets defeated. Cid notices a pendant with a picture of a girl. He keeps the pendant and leaves. His sister arrives back next day after breaking out her chains. All her injuries are healed overnight, and she leaves for the academy the following day as if nothing happened. Cid is excited about going to the academy in 2 years, and meanwhile he decides to work with the girls. But to his surprise, they bid him farewell. According to them, the Cult of Diablos is a global-scale organization, and they are going to fight it. While Cid wonders they just left him as they can't keep up with his charade, and pretend to fight an organization that doesn't exist. 2 years passed since then, and Cid is on his way to the academy. He thinks about his previous life where he is hitting his head against the rock, screaming magic, and jumping in front of a truck. It has been 7 months in the academy, and there he has also made 2 friends, Skell and Poe, who are perfect for background characters. They discuss a bet about yesterday's test where the low scorer has to propose to Princess Alexia, and face the brutal rejection by her in front of the whole school. Cid, who has scored the lowest, has to do it, and his friends expect him to honor his bet. When they reach the school, they see a boy proposing to the princess, and he gets insulted when she brutally rejects his proposal in front of the school. His friends ask him not to lose hope after this incident. However, he is looking forward to it. With a shivering voice, and in a super mediocre way, he confesses his love to the same girl. He was sure he would get a horrible rejection, but to his surprise she accepted his proposal, shocking everyone, and Cid wonders how he suddenly became a rom-com protagonist. In the cafeteria, Cid's friends are discussing how Alexia accepted his proposal. Suddenly, she comes nearby, and joins them. Everyone at the cafeteria is surprised by this, as she is sitting in the lower nobility seats for the first time. The royal food is served, but she mentions that she can't eat it all, and Cid immediately starts digging into her food, hoping that she would dump him soon. She asks him to practice together for upcoming bushan competition, but he mentions he is in the lowest section 9, to which she mentions that she will take care of it, and wants him to join section 1. The instructor, Xenon, welcomes Cid, and he starts his sparring session with the princess. Cid analyzes that the princess has slow movements and doesn't use much magic. He initially thought that she was matching his level, but she wasn't. She has a perfect technique that stays true to the basics, but it's very plain. The world sees her as inferior to her sister, who is regarded as the most powerful dark knight in the kingdom. After the fight, the princess mentions that she hates Cid's style because it's the same as hers. Xenon asks for the princess's final decision about dating Cid, and she confirms that she will be his girlfriend. We then learn that she's engaged to Xenon, and she accepted Cid's proposal to break off the engagement. Cid, who wants to remain a background character, refuses to help her because he doesn't want too much attention. Alexia reveals that she knows about the bet he made with his friends. She wants him to be her pretend boyfriend until Xenon breaks up with her, and she tosses a coin to the floor. Cid asks if she finds him that greedy, to which she replies yes. Cid, being the ultimate gold digger, jumps over the coin and tells her she's right. She tosses another coin, which he catches with his mouth and decides to become her dog. They spend the following day pretending as fake couples. Cid thinks that even though Alexia is well-mannered in public, behind closed doors she's a whirlwind of insults. He decides to act like a robot that always agrees with her, as debating with her seems useless. Later, when they are hanging out, Cid asks why she doesn't like Xenon. She mentions that he's too perfect, and she believes that no one is perfect. So, he must be a massive liar or a psycho. She considers him a good dog, and tosses another coin. 2 more weeks pass, and while traveling, she discusses his fencing style, and tells that even though it's pretty to watch, she still hates it. She then tells him that she always wanted to be as strong as her sister Iris, so she tried to get stronger in her own way, but it got her nowhere, and now she is called an ordinary fencer. Cid tells her that he likes her fencing style, and she tells him her sister also told the same when she lost at the previous Bushan festival, and since then she hates her style. However, Cid mentions that even if other people see her style as worthless he likes it, which makes her point a sword at him, but he doesn't reply. She leaves, and he thinks that this is the end of this unwanted relationship. The following day his friends ask him if he had plot development with the princess, to which he refuses and they curse him for losing the golden chance. As they enter the academy, they are stopped by Xenon who mentions that Alexia had been kidnapped, and they arrest him as he is the prime suspect. He surrenders, and realizes that he is in trouble. We then see Alexia chained in a cell, and a crazy doctor is drawing her blood. There is also a disfigured creature with a large hump in chains nearby. Meanwhile, we see Cid tied, and getting tortured because they think he has kidnapped the princess. But the Psycho MC is enjoying this background character event, and puts on a great show when they torture him. The doctor is continuing to drain Alexia, and mentions that his earlier lab was destroyed due to which his experiment was incomplete. He then starts hitting the creature nearby, but Alexia intervenes by asking him to continue taking her blood. On the other hand, we see Xenon submitting the report about the kidnapping to Alexia's sister. Although the prime suspect is Cid, they doubt that he's capable of overpowering her. He's been interrogated for the past 5 days but they have got nothing, and his sister is also causing problems, demanding to release him. They decide to release Cid but keep an eye on him. He meets a suspicious girl on the way home, and it's Alpha. She is present at his apartment, and already waiting for him with food. We then learn that they take turns being Cid's playmate, I meant personal assistant. She informs him that his harem is doing well, and it's expanding. They are also investigating the cult, and suspect Alexia's kidnapping was done by them for her royal blood. While Cid thinks that it's nice for them to play along with his game. She also asks permission to dispose of the guys who tortured him, but Psycho thinks they should be awarded for their performance. Alexia is in awful condition, and there are syringe marks all over her hand. We then see Cid arranging things in his private room. He mentions that he bought all those things by defeating bandits, and by being Alexia's pet. He adds a fake letter as a finishing touch. Beta arrives, and informs him they plan to launch an all-out attack tonight, and they have gathered 114 people, and Cid wonders if they hired extras for this. Cid shows the fake letter, mentioning that he will prelude tonight, and the world would know them. The guys who interrogated him attempt to arrest him again by planting false evidence, but he instantly kills them, while Beta is taking notes of his performance. As the Shadow Garden starts their attack, the crazy doctor decides to inject the creature with his prototype, and it turns into a huge monster. The creature instantly kills the doctor, and frees Alexia before it makes its way out in public. As Alexia tries to escape, she meets Xenon and learns that he is behind the kidnapping. He has also funded doctor research, and wishes to get a seat on the 12 high-ranking Knights Order. He is a typical bag who wants fame and money by any means. Alexia tries to attack him, but he easily blocks her, and insults her ordinary fencing style. Alexia doesn't give up, but he easily defeats her. Just when she thinks that this will be the end of her, we hear a footstep and it's Cid in his shadow costume. As Cid walks towards them, Xenon realizes that he is the one who has been going after their small bases. Cid introduces himself as Shadow, and Xenon thinks that he is a coward for attacking the bases where no core members of the cult were present. Xenon launches an attack, but Cid easily dodges it and mocks his ability. On the other hand, we see the knights trying to stop the monster, but their attacks have no effect, as it instantly heals itself. Princess Iris arrives and inflicts a more serious wound on the monster, but it heals that too. She decides to get more serious and cuts off the monster's arm, but the monster easily regenerates. She then decides to cut the monster into small pieces so that it won't be able to regenerate, and starts attacking it. Just then, Alpha arrives and states that Iris is just making the monster suffer. Alpha then launches her special attack, which not only defeats the monster but also cures it and returns it to its original human form of a young girl. Alpha also notices the same pendant on the girl that Claire's kidnapper had. She then told Iris that they were Shadow Garden, and that they would take care of the situation, so she should just stay out of their way. As the Shadow Garden attack continued, Iris worried about her sister. Xenon decides to get more serious and uses more magic power. As they fought, Alexia realized that Cid's technique is the same as hers, but it had gone beyond excellence. Cid overpowered Xenon and injured him, but Xenon didn't give up. He decided to take his dose of steroids and turned into a monster. However, Cid mocked his strength and beat him down. He then tells Xenon about his pursuit of ultimate power, where he decided to become nuclear, in order to avoid being killed by it, and being the ultimate cringe lord. Instead of normally finishing off his beaten opponent, he decides to show off and uses his ultimate move, I Am Atomic, which is as powerful as a nuclear weapon, and it left a giant crater in the middle of the city. Not sure if I should be impressed or worried that the Psycho MC casually unleashed a nuke just to show off and kill a single guy. Anyway, Alexia found herself unharmed, and she is motivated by her savior. So, she picked up the sword, and started practicing her fencing style. Just then, Iris arrived and was glad that Alexia was safe. Sometime later, Alexia returned to school and told Cid about what had happened. She thanked him for liking her fencing style. Even though Xenon is dead, she asks him if he would like to pretend to be a couple a little while longer. However, Cid refuses, which shocks her. Being the gentle girl she is, Alexia cuts him down. Later, it becomes known that some individuals discovered a massive amount of blood behind the school building, but no body was found, and this incident went on to become one of the school's 7 mysteries, known as the bodiless murder.
What? What the fuck?
We then see the Shadow Garden girls discussing the incident, and are getting wet thinking about the display of power shown by Cid. They then discuss a critical issue, someone is using their name to kill people in the name of justice, and they plan to apprehend the culprit. Meanwhile, Iris decides to form a new investigation team, as she lacks trust in the Knight's Order following the prior incident. She invites Glenn and Marco to join her, also revealing an artifact that serves as a clue. However, they require someone to decipher it. We are then introduced to a girl who is studying the same artifact, and she bumps into Cid, who is drenched in blood from Alexia's attack. We are then shown someone in a hood killing a man, and he identifies himself as a member of the Shadow Garden. The next day Skell and Poe wonder if Cid had any plot development with Alexia, but he mentions that they broke up and nothing happened between them, making them disappointed. They then invite Cid to visit a place that sells some good stuff which can make girls excited. It's called chocolate. Curious about this world's chocolate, Cid agrees to go with them. Iris shows the artifact which they found from the hideout of the cult to Sherry Barnett, who is considered as the most brilliant mind of the kingdom. She asks Sherry to decipher it, and with her father's encouragement, Sherry accepts. Iris assigns Glenn and Marco for her protection. Alexia also wants to help, so she convinces Iris to let her join the team. Meanwhile, Cid and his friends wait in line to enter the store, but the wait time is 80 minutes. His friends worry about being late due to news of a killer roaming at night. While they wait, a store worker asks Cid to take a survey. Though his friends want to join, the worker states they only need one and takes him inside. Upon entering, the store reminds him of the department stores from his previous life. She takes him to a room above the store, revealing that the entire establishment is operated by the Shadow Garden girls, with Gamma in charge. Memories of his youth flood back, remembering when he would share random knowledge from his past, calling it the wisdom of shadows. He realizes that Gamma is the smartest among his harem members but a bit clumsy. She invites him to sit on a throne, and he feels like a true harem king. As a reward, he conjures fireworks from his magic, making Gamma wet, her eyes. It reminds her of when he used the same light to save her. Cid then inquires about the profits of her business and is shocked to learn that she has numerous franchises in and out of the kingdom, and has 1 billion zeni at their disposal. He wonders how she accomplished this with his knowledge, while he had to become a princess dog for mere zennies. He calms, realizing she did it all for him. Gamma believes he came to inquire about the killing incident. Cid, who is unaware, plays along. She briefs him on the incident, and he suspects Alexia's involvement, so he tells them that he will look into it. Gamma introduces Nu, the girl from earlier. She is their recent member and encourages Cid to use her however he pleases.
What do you mean by that?
Before leaving, he requests chocolate and slyly takes a zeni. As he rushes back with his friends, he senses a fight and makes up an excuse that he has to take a dump, and tells them to go away. His friends think that he is so brave to take a dump at this hour while the killer is lurking around, and being the true friends they are, they immediately leave him. Cid then witnesses Alexia battling fake Shadow Garden members and realizes his mistake. Just in time, he arrives to save her. Two escape, but he catches up to them and quickly incapacitates one. Nu intervenes, asking him to leave the rest to her as she will gather information from them. When the man attempts to attack her, she quickly cuts him down, stating she's more sadistic than Cid. Elsewhere, a man informs the leader about their men's capture, but he remains calm as they've located the item they sought, and retrieving it is their top priority. Alexia informs Iris that the killer was impersonating Shadow Garden and adds that they are fighting the cult. Iris hopes for more information when the artifact gets deciphered, and considers both the cult and Shadow Garden as enemies. The following day, rumors about Cid's supposed bathroom break circulate, but he still gives the chocolate to Skell and Poe. Skell tries to offer the chocolate to an upper-class girl, but he gets busted when her boyfriend shows up. Poe makes an attempt, but the girl recognizes him as her stalker. Cid decides to randomly give the chocolate to the next girl he encounters, and it happens to be Sherry. Later, as she ponders what chocolate is, her father enters and explains its popularity. He believes the boy who gave it to her must love her and asks if she'll accept his proposal. He emphasizes the importance of social skills along with her research. He expresses that he is lucky to have such a good daughter, but she insists she's the lucky one as he adopted her. Later Sherry reflects on what her father told her, and thinks about Cid. She finally decides to try the chocolate, and finds it really sweet. After that, we see New accompanying Cid disguised as a student. She informs him that the man they captured had been subjected to powerful brainwashing that destroyed his mind, which made her unable to extract any information from him. While New explains, Cid's attention is divided as he ponders how Skell ended up signing him up for the bushan tournament. New further explains that the cult raises orphan children, and brainwash them. They confirm the presence of a named first child, called Rex. She explains that first child maintain their sense of self, and if they are deployed means the cult has some bigger purpose. Lost in thought, Cid states he needs some time to think and leaves. Afterward, at the tournament, Claire easily wins her fight. Next up is the student council president, Rose Oriana, versus Cid. Excited about the match, Cid aims to showcase his mastery of techniques, but they are all to show how perfectly a background character is defeated. As the fight begins, Cid lets himself get hit and uses fake blood, demonstrating his unsightly defeat in the first round. Rose seems set to win, but Cid wishes to continue as he has 47 other techniques to display. Despite being repeatedly one-shot, Cid stands after each hit, displaying unwavering determination to keep fighting. Impressed by his persistence, Rose decides to get serious, and tries to finish him off with her next move. However, the judge intervenes to save Cid, declaring Rose the winner, as he thinks it would be dangerous if Cid continued. Though Cid protests, and wants to continue to showcase his remaining cringe moves, he is carried out after the fight, but he earns the respect of Rose. Later we see Cid covered in bandages, and he hopes to be in the cliched scene, and showcase the rest of his cringe moves someday. Sherry approaches Cid, and asks him about his health, but he doesn't remember her. She gives him cookies she baked, and suggests they start as friends. Cid, unsure of her intentions, accepts. Sherry informs her father that they're going to be friends, and Cid recognizes her father as Lutheran Barnett, assistant principal of Academy of Science. He is one of the people on his list with whom he shouldn't have contact to maintain his status as a background character. They engage in small talk, and he requests Cid to treat his daughter well, while Cid considers using his injuries as an excuse to create some distance from her. Later, Sherry is thinking about Cid, and wonders if she should visit him since they are friends. She then decides to meet Alexia, who thinks she's there to discuss the artifact, but to her surprise, Sherry asks about her relationship with Cid. Alexia clarifies that they broke up and were never actually dating, they were just pretending to be a couple for specific reasons. Learning this, Sherry is glad and reveals that she became friends with Cid. Alexia, though jealous and annoyed, hides her feelings behind a smile. 5 days later, Cid returns to school and notices that everyone seems more kind to him than usual. Rose then arrives at their class to explain about the upcoming election to fill a vacancy on the student council. Meanwhile, we see the masked knight using an artifact to create a barrier around the school, which only Cid seems to notice. As Alexia returns to school, she is surprised to find the gate closed and a guard at the entrance dead. Cid realizes he can't use his magic, and just then men claiming to be from the Shadow Garden enter the room. They explain that they're taking over the academy. Rose attempts to resist but discovers her magic is blocked. The fake Shadow Garden members can use magic, and one of them shatters her sword. They attempt to kill her, but Cid is excited as the school getting attacked by terrorists is one of the fantasy of our psycho MC. So, being the ultimate cringe lord, he can't pass this opportunity to be the perfect background character, and jumps in taking the hit. He collapses to the ground covered in blood, and Rose wonders why he risked his life to save her. She thinks he must have loved her, which is why he fought so hard during their match, and sacrificed himself now. The terrorists then gather all the students in the auditorium. Cid starts tapping his chest, and his heart begins beating again, waking him up. He reveals that he used a secret technique to stop his heart for 10 minutes while keeping blood flow to his brain steady. Even though this technique could have caused his life, the Psycho MC will do anything to be the ideal background character. His magic is still blocked, but he can use it by focusing on narrow threads. Meanwhile, Rex enters Sherry's room. He claims to be from Shadow Garden, but then he's unsure if it's actually Shadow Guardian. He tells her that he's there to retrieve the artifact, and as he attacks her, Glenn intervenes. Rex is surprised that Glenn managed to stop him without magic. While Glenn and Marco keep the terrorists busy, they let Sherry escape. Cid watches the terrorists' movements, and is impressed by their execution. However, he's irritated that they're all dressed in black in the middle of the day, and don't have a proper dressing sense. Since his attire is black, he decides to wait till night to make his grand entrance more effective. He notices a girl running, and realizes it's Sherry. He secretly assists her, taking out numerous terrorists and preventing her from being caught. Sherry stumbles on the stairs, but just then Cid catches her. He advises her to keep her voice down, and remove her noisy slippers, before entering her father's room. Cid eliminates a few more terrorists on the way. Sherry finds the book she was searching for and explains that the artifact, the Eye of Avarice, is blocking their magic. It absorbs magic from users, but it can be programmed to ignore certain magical frequencies. To extract its magic effectively, it would need to be placed in an area with a significant concentration of magical energy. Since all the students are currently held in the auditorium, they suspect that the artifact is nearby. Furthermore, if it absorbs magic beyond its limit, it could result in an explosion that would destroy the entire school. This is why her father didn't publish his findings but gave the artifact to the government. The artifact Sherry was researching is used to control the Eye of Avarice, and potentially reverse its effects. Sherry plans to reach the auditorium through the hidden tunnels, and when she's near the Eye of Avarice, she'll activate her artifact to stop it from functioning. She mentions that she left the tools to fine-tune the artifact in her study room, and Cid offers to retrieve them for her. Rex reports to the cult leader, who threatens Rex as he hasn't obtained the artifact. Rex also mentions their losses, and they suspect it's Shadow Garden. As he leaves, the cult leader hopes to be reinstated among the Knights of Rounds. Rex is ambushed by Cid and loses his men in an instant that he thinks Cid's power is due to an artifact, and he creates a net around himself to trap Cid. But Cid manages to get inside the net, and continues attacking Rex. He leads him into a classroom where he is shocked to see the classroom filled with dead terrorists. Just then Cid comes from above and finishes him off. Meanwhile, New discovers Glenn's dead body, and Marco is unconscious. Cid arrives, searching for Sherry's tools. New explains that Marco was her fiancé. She reveals that Shadow Garden has infiltrated the academy and is awaiting orders. Since they can't use magic, the situation is risky, so only the 7 shadows can manage it. New herself can only use about half of her power. As she provides her report, Cid asks for her assistance in finding certain items. After getting all the tools, Cid explains he needed them to fine-tune an artifact, allowing them to neutralize the Eye of Avarice, and New is amazed by his knowledge. He informs her he'll finish by evening, and she acknowledges that Shadow Garden will get things ready by then. After that we see New signaling the Shadow Garden who are ready to attack, while Sherry is tuning the artifact. Meanwhile, we see that Iris is unable to do anything, and is forced to stay outside the academy along with the guards. On the other hand, Sherry fine-tunes the artifact, and uses the secret door to head into the tunnels. But before she enters, she recalls seeing the death of her mother as a child. Lutheran comforted her, stating her mother was a great researcher and offered to raise her as he supported her mother's research. Now, Sherry hopes to repay him. Cid leaves, and Sherry heads into the tunnels alone. The cult boss wonders why Rex is taking so long. Some of the terrorists then start shooting the students for fun, but Rose tells the students not to do anything, as without magic, they won't stand a chance. Also she senses a high magical energy from the boss. Meanwhile, Sherry reaches the auditorium and sees the cult boss holding the Eye of Avarice. She activates the artifact and throws it, which disables the magic blocking field. At that moment, Rose attacks one of the terrorists, stating their magic is back, and tells the students to fight back. As the fight continues, Rose realizes that she doesn't have her full magic power, and plans to defeat the boss before she runs out of magic power, but the terrorist attacks her. Just when she thinks it's over for her, Cid comes to her rescue with a badass entry. The Shadow Garden members also appear and engage the terrorists. The cult boss leaves but activates a system that causes the auditorium and the rest of the school to burst into flames. After that, Iris asks her men to put out the fire and sees that the students are outside and okay. She asks Rose what happened, and Rose explains that once their magic was back, an organization called Shadow Garden came and killed the terrorists, but they were also calling themselves Shadow Garden. Meanwhile, we see that Sherry couldn't find her father at the auditorium and wonders where he is. After that, we see the cult boss burning some books. Just then, Cid appears and asks why Lutheran is dressed like that. The cult boss removes his helmet, revealing he is indeed Lutheran, and wonders how Cid knows that. Cid states it was obvious from the moment he saw him and asks why he did this. Lutheran explains that once he reached the top of the sword-fighting world, he became sick and easily lost all the glory he fought hard to attain. He started searching for a way to cure his disease and found potential in a certain artifact. He funded Sherry's mother's research and eventually found the artifact he longed for. However, Sherry's mother stated the Eye of Avarice was dangerous and wanted to give it to the government for safekeeping. It is then revealed that it was Lutheran who killed Sherry's mother, as he wanted the artifact for himself. Sherry didn't realize it was him and continued her mother's research. Cid wonders if Lutheran used Sherry for his selfish reasons, and he confirms it. Cid then explains he doesn't care about what happens to anyone else, but suggests they start before someone else comes. Cid and Lutheran then face each other, but in an instant, Lutheran cuts Cid, and he falls through the window. As he's about to leave, Shadow arrives. Lutheran knows that he's no match for Shadow, so he pulls out the Eye of Avarice, and combines it with its control unit. As he does, he starts overflowing with magical energy and feels reborn. Lutheran then starts attacking Shadow. However, Shadow easily blocks his attacks without even moving from his spot. Lutheran decides to get serious and attacks Shadow, but he ends up getting cut by him. As Lutheran continues his attack, he tells him that he made sure Shadow Garden is blamed for all of this, and they will be hunted by everyone. Shadow finds that hilarious and explains that he doesn't care about being depicted as good or evil, as he is a psycho MC who walks his own path. He doesn't care if he's blamed for all the crimes of the world, and will continue to do what he must. Shadow then disarms Lutheran and proceeds to stab his limbs. He then recalls how Lutheran stated he killed Sherry's mother and stabs him the same way, killing him. At that moment, Sherry arrives and sees her dead father and starts crying over his body. Shadow thinks it's better if he doesn't tell her about her mother and leaves. Shadow is labeled as an enemy of the kingdom and is wanted for mass murder, kidnapping, arson, and robbery. Gamma tells Alpha about what Shadow told Lutheran. Alpha thought they stood for righteousness, but Shadow doesn't seem to see it that way, and thinks that they must live up to his resolve. She tells Gamma to assemble the available 7 shadows. The academy gets closed for an earlier summer break due to all the damages. Sherry thanks Cid for his help the other day, and tells him that she decided to go study abroad in Lawless. She wished that she'd have more time to have plot development with Cid, but Cid tells her they can do that next time.
Okay.
Before leaving, he asks her what she plans to do, but she tells him it's a secret and leaves. As the summer break started earlier, most students decided to head home, having nothing to do at the academy. Cid decides to stay in the dorm, and uses his Spider-Man abilities to avoid his crazy sister, but soon realizes he doesn't have anything to do there either. Just then, he receives a pigeon post from Alpha, informing him about the sacred land, Lindworm. Meanwhile, back in the Shadow Garden residence, Epsilon uses her slime magic to make her plot bigger. She recalls how Shadow saved her and granted her slime magic, which allows her to change her form at will and defy her fate of having a smaller plot. We then see Beta, who is struggling to write a novel about how Shadow defeated Xenon, and decides to get some fresh air outside. Beta ends up meeting Epsilon, who tells her that lately Shadow has been staring at her, especially her huge plot. Beta doesn't believe this, but Epsilon states that since Beta has a bigger plot than hers, she must have also received Shadow's attention. Epsilon playfully teases Beta, wondering if she hasn't received similar gazes from Shadow. Just then, Nu arrives and informs them that they have a new assignment from Alpha. Iris and Alexia visit Gamma's store, to prepare for Alexia's trip to the Sacred Land, where she will be a special guest for the goddess's trial. Alexia intends to use this opportunity to speak with the Archbishop and investigate dark rumors related to corruption and missing orphans. Gamma introduces herself as Luna, the president of the establishment, after which Alexia explains the purpose of their visit. She requests to see some more casual clothing, suitable for everyday wear rather than her trip. Alexia hesitates to specify, but Gamma quickly understands her intentions. She proceeds to show them some panties, commonly known as thongs. Iris is shocked seeing them as they barely cover anything, but Gamma mentions that men like them, and it's good for plot development. Iris is against the idea, but Alexia likes them and is confident she will look good in them. She ends up trying them, and manages to convince Iris to let her buy them. We are then cut to the scene from the terrorist attack where Rose heard that Cid is alive and rushed to find him. She discovers him covered in bandages and believes that he must have survived because of his deep love for her. She accepts his love, and tells him that she will give him her heart. Back in the present, Cid and Rose are traveling together on a train towards the Sacred Lands. Rose is clinging to him, while Cid is trying to get some space from her. She informs him that it will take them 2 more days to reach their destination and suggests that they use this time for some plot development.
Yeah, boy.
Cid realizes that it was a mistake to take the train, as he had initially planned to run there faster during the night. Unfortunately, Rose found him at the station and insisted on accompanying him. Rose then asks Cid if he plans to take the goddess's trial, and he confirms it, thinking that's probably why Alpha summoned him there. Knowing that she is a princess, Rose thinks that their relationship will face opposition from others but hopes that Cid successfully completes the goddess's trial. This would enable her to speak to her father about their relationship. Until then, she can't reveal their relationship to anyone but believes that they can have a happy future if they work hard. Later that night, Rose attempts to develop the plot with Cid.
Yes! 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 Yes!
However, Cid, being the typical MC, hides from her and decides not to unsheath his Excalibur.
No! 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 Fuck!
Upon reaching Lindworm, Cid notices many keychains with left arms. Rose explains that according to the local legend, Olivier cut off the left arm of the demon Diablos. Somewhere within the nearby mountains lies the ruins known as the Sanctuary, where it is said that Diablo's left arm is sealed. Walking around, Rose notices a signing event featuring the popular novelist named Natsum, renowned for her tremendous imagination and original content. Rose is a big fan of hers, so they decide to join the line. Cid takes the opportunity to check out some of Natsum's books and comes across titles like I Am a Dragon, Romeo and Julieta, Asherella, Little Crimson Riding Hood, Star It's a Trap Wars, One Purse, Dragon Bowl, and the last one is the name of this show, but he can't read it. He quickly realizes that these titles are plagiarized and suspects that someone else may have reincarnated like him. He decides to join the line to find out who this is. To his surprise, he discovers that Beta is posing as Natsum, using his wisdom to gain fame. Cid recalls that Beta had expressed her love for literature, so he shared a few stories from his past life with her. He had hoped she would use them as inspiration for a cool story, but she ended up stealing them. Beta signs a book for Cid and hands it to him, mentioning that it contains all the details of the mission. After that, Rose shows her book to Cid, explaining that Beta wrote her name in it. They wonder about the autograph Beta left for Cid, but they are both surprised to find that it's written in an ancient language. Rose has some knowledge of the language but can't fully decipher it. She questions why Beta wrote it this way, and Cid suggests it might be because it looks cool. We then see Alpha, who is standing next to Archbishop Drake's lifeless body, thinking what secrets he might have held that even the man of his high status was murdered. Cid notices a man running on a rooftop and catches him. The man launches an attack, but Cid easily blocks him with an ice cream spoon. Just then, Epsilon appears on the scene and eliminates the man. She informs Cid that their target has been taken out by the cult's executioner. While they've dealt with the henchman, the executioner has gone into hiding. She tells him that they will be moving to Plan B, and Cid informs her that he will be proceeding with his own plans. As he walks away, he thinks that Epsilon is a proud woman, and he could tell because of the amount of slime she put into her giant assets. After that, we see Cid going to the hot springs, as it's one of the things he likes. He enters the hot spring, and Alexia is already there too. He wonders why she is in Lindworm, and she explains that she is a special guest for the goddess's trial. Alexia asks him the same question, and he explains that a friend invited him for the goddess trial, but he doesn't know what it is. Alexia explains that it's a fighting ritual held once every year when the door to the sanctuary is open. Ancient warriors come out of the sanctuary to fight against the challengers they deem worthy. She also tells him about the murder of the archbishop, whom she was supposed to audit, but she can't share the details with an outsider. She tries to recruit him into the Crimson Knights, but Cid is not interested. Alexia expected Cid to be ogling her, but he is not interested in the plot development, and tells her to stop trying to check out his Excalibur. Alexia mocks him by saying that what he has there is probably just a worm, but Cid tells her not to judge a book by its cover, as what she thought was a worm could be a sword contained in its sheath, and stands up. Alexia is shocked to see his full plot armor, and he tells her that when the sword is unsheathed, it sets off on a quest for chaos, and shows her a towel trick before leaving. After that, we see the acting Archbishop Jack Nelson, who is welcoming everyone for the goddess trial. Alexia remembers that he called off her audit as the original archbishop passed away. He told them to leave church matters to them and asked her to enjoy the trials. Alexia suspects Nelson as the prime murder suspect, and plans to get authorization from her father again, but she thinks that by the time she gets it, all the evidence will probably be disposed of. Just then, she notices people cheering for Beta, who is sitting beside her. She is jealous of Beta's giant cannons, and believes girls like her are the most corrupt on the inside. Beta gives her a cold look, and thinks that Alexia is not worthy of being in her next novel. She is also jealous of how close Alexia was with Cid, and thinks that girls like her are the most corrupt ones. It seems that Alexia has sensed her feelings, and she stomps her feet in frustration. After that, Nelson activates a magic seal, and the trial begins. The first contender is from Oriana Kingdom, Top Baterius. Two people from the audience sitting behind Cid explain that if a warrior is summoned, you can't leave the barrier around the arena until one of them is defeated. If anyone manages to defeat the ancient warrior, they would receive a medal that grants them entry into any knight order in the world. Top challenges a warrior, but no one comes out. After that, a few other challengers come in, but no warriors emerge to face them. Meanwhile, Cid wonders if it would be cool to enter as Shadow, showing off his skills, and then disappear, leaving people to wonder about the mysterious man. Some time passes, and Cid is getting bored, as so far, only a person named Rose has managed to summon the warrior. Just then, his name is announced as the next challenger, and people think this student must be strong to challenge the warriors. Cid wonders if he should go, as the ancient warriors usually match the strength of those that come out, so it may be revealed that he is quite strong. However, if he refuses, the academy may expel him. Cid then creates a light above the arena to confuse everyone, and then jumps in as Shadow. He activates the seal, and Nelson is shocked as it got activated even though he didn't activate it. A person emerges from the seal, and Beta recognizes her as Aurora, the Witch of Calamity. However, there isn't much information about her due to the chaos and destruction that followed her. Beta then asks Nelson to tell her more about Aurora, and he couldn't refuse after seeing the giant plot in front of him. He states that Shadow is unfortunate to have summoned her, as she is the most powerful witch in all of history. Alexia, on the other hand, disagrees, stating that if Aurora came, then Shadow's powers must have reached her level. Shadow and Aurora face each other, both with excited smiles as they start their battle. They both enjoy the fight, with Shadow initially observing and skillfully evading all of Aurora's attacks. He enjoys the battle but realizes that Aurora can't use her full power. He defeats her with a single slash, expressing his wish that she could have fought at her full strength. Shadow then flies off, leaving everyone shocked that he won the battle. The barrier breaks, and a magical door appears in the middle of the arena. Cid feels satisfied, believing that people will now talk about Shadow and forget about the student named Cid. However, a magical door then appears next to him. He tries to move away, but the door follows him. Realizing that he won't be able to escape, he decides to enter it. Nelson wonders if the sanctuary has responded to Shadow's call and explains that the door appears to those who are worthy to pass through it. The door starts opening, and Nelson gives orders to remove the citizens and cancel the trial. He then attempts to make the girls leave, but just then, Shadow Garden appears, led by Alpha. She asks Alexia and Rose not to do anything until the door is closed and then enters the door. Epsilon appears, having already defeated Nelson's guards, and states that he will be going inside the gate with them but asks the girls to remain here. Other Shadow Garden members appear, and they take Beta as a hostage. Nelson refuses and calls his guard, Venom, to kill Epsilon. Venom attempts to strike Epsilon, but the slash ends up cutting her fake slime-filled plot. Epsilon is furious, not wanting to be exposed. She quickly reattaches them and slices Venom into pieces. She then asks Nelson if he saw anything, but he claims he didn't see anything. Epsilon grabs him and jumps into the door. The door starts to close, but Alexia and Rose jump in as well. They fall on top of Beta, who wonders if Alexia is grabbing her giant plot out of curiosity. Just then, Alpha appears, and Alexia claims she tripped and fell into the door, but Alpha doesn't care about it. She explains that they are in the place where Diablo's left arm is sealed. They came to learn more about the cult, and it was revealed that the hero Oliver was actually a girl. Alpha then shows her face, which is the same as Olivier's. Nelson then realizes she was a possessed elf but should have been dead since she wasn't compatible. Alpha states they know the truth behind Olivia and the possessed. They suspect that the cult's goal isn't just to revive the demon, and decide to proceed to see for themselves. Alpha then activates a large door and opens it. Meanwhile, Cid enters a room where Aurora is, and wonders if she summoned him. Aurora states she didn't but states that they had a fun fight. She wonders how he got there, and Cid explains a door showed up and didn't stop following him. He asks her about how to leave the place, but she is not aware about it either. He proceeds to leave, but she asks him to free her, who is in a straitjacket. Cid frees her, and she explains that the sanctuary is a memory prison, created from ancient battles. In order to be free, they need to go to its center and destroy its magical core. Once the core is destroyed, everything will disappear, and he'll be able to leave. She also states that they can't use magic, as it will be absorbed. Cid asks what will happen when she is free, to which Aurora states she will vanish into nothing. Alpha and others see many people working in the facility. Alpha explains that it's the memories of the hero Olivier from long ago. The cult gathered orphan children and used them as guinea pigs for their experiment. Most of the children ended up dying, and only a small group of girls survived. Meanwhile, Cid and Aurora see a memory of young Aurora crying. Aurora believes that to move forward, they need to end this memory. She slaps her younger self, telling her that crying won't change anything, and the memory shatters. Alpha continues to explain that Olivia was one of the compatible children, and they implanted demon cells in her. Nelson confirms they didn't have a choice as they needed power to fight the demon. Alpha proceeds, explaining that once Olivia matured, she was given a mission to extract new cells from Diablos. Olivia remained obedient, believing that if she completed her mission, it would lead to people living in peace. However, no matter how many parts she cut off, the demon still lived. The cult used powerful artifacts to immobilize the left arm and drew its blood for research. They were able to create red pills, but their side effects were too strong and not what the cult wanted. They eventually created pills that granted tremendous power and an ageless body. Alpha points to a man in the memory, and it's Nelson. He reveals that the drug is called the Beads of Diablos. Alpha states it had two flaws, and Alexia thinks that one of them is hair loss, as Nelson is bald now.
Emotional damage!
However, he mentions that it was just because of stress. Alpha then mentions that the first flaw is that they needed to take the beads once a year, or the effect would disappear. The second flaw is that they could only produce 12 quantities in a year, explaining why the Knights of Rounds have only 12 members. To this day, they have not perfected the drug, and believe the key to that was the demon's arm and the hero's descendants with Olivia's blood. Alpha then asks Nelson, referring to him as the 11th of the rounds, if she is correct. Nelson confirms and reveals himself as Nelson the Avaricious. He tries to transform, but in that moment, Delta stabs him from behind and throws him down into the water. Nelson emerges from the water, breaking the memory, and they all get separated into different groups. He multiplies himself, facing Alpha and Delta. Delta easily cuts down Nelson's copies, but something seems wrong. Nelson mentions that the closer they are to the center of the sanctuary, the more their power gets drained. Alpha adds that as Nelson gets closer to the center, he gains more power. Nelson had hoped to get even closer, but thinks that he has come far enough to defeat them. We then see Aurora walking in a separate dimension, and ask Cid what he's doing. We then see Cid walking under Aurora, matching her footsteps. He mentions that this place has no sense of direction, and Aurora wonders if he's trying to check out her plot. They then progress to another memory, a battlefield filled with casualties. They find a young Aurora crying, and she takes Cid's sword, intending to kill the young Aurora to end the memory. However, the deceased soldiers come back to life, and they try to attack her. Cid saves her, and we also notice he has his right eye closed for some reason. Aurora explains that the sanctuary is rejecting them. Cid asks what will happen if Aurora dies, and she believes that she will return to the first room where they met. We then see Epsilon's group who encounter a sick person, but as they pass through Epsilon, the person vanishes. Epsilon explains that it was likely a memory that reacted to their presence and materialized. They discover an archive with information about the possessed and realize that this fate could have befallen them if they hadn't encountered Shadow. They use the Polaroid cameras which Ada has created based on Shadow's information, and they use them to capture images of the files. Just then, their slime outfits begin to disappear as they are closer to the core, and their plot is about to be exposed. Epsilon's slime cannon falls off, creating an awkward moment, but she quickly reattaches it. Meanwhile, Cid and Aurora easily handle the approaching zombies. However, as more zombies start to surround them, Cid decides to end the memory by killing the young Aurora. They finally reach the center of the sanctuary. On the other hand, despite losing power, Delta continues to overwhelm Nelson, who is astonished by her strength. However, her plot armor is barely holding up. Nelson then unleashes his full power to create more clones, but Delta counters with her own ultimate move. Aurora informs Cid that their next objective is to destroy the magic core, which is located on the other side of a door. Cid considers cutting the chains holding the door but worries that his sword might not be powerful enough and could break in the process. They notice a sword in front of the door, and Aurora explains that it bears inscriptions indicating it can cut the chains. Cid attempts to pull the sword from the ground but finds it impossible to move, and concludes that only the chosen one can wield it. Aurora then spots a sign stating that the holy sword can only be drawn by direct descendants, and is surprised at how quickly Cid deciphered the magical inscription. With no other means to open the door, they decide to sit and wait. Meanwhile, we witness Delta destroying Nelson's clones, and the girls are amazed by her strength, but think that she's just a musclehead. As Delta kills the last clone, the memory shatters, and Nelson is shocked that they killed over 100 of his clones without even breaking a sweat. Alpha explains that even if you were to create 100 copies, they would all share one brain, making them challenging to control effectively. Nelson then notices a statue of Olivier, and calls for her to come. Olivier appears, but at the same time, Epsilon joins Alpha. She tells Alpha that they have completed their investigation, and are free to leave at any time. Alpha decides to leave, surprising Nelson with their decision. Alpha mentions that their sole objective was to cut off the source of power. They now understand how the sanctuary's defenses operate, and plan to return later. As Alpha and the rest of the group leave, Nelson starts wondering what to tell the others. He plans to explain that he lured them there to expose their identities, and intends to obtain Alpha's blood to help perfect the beads. However, he suddenly receives a notification indicating the presence of someone else in the sanctuary center, and decides to go there with Olivier. Cid asks Aurora why she wants to disappear, and she explains that once the core is destroyed, she will finally be free from the prison of repeating memories. Cid assures her that things will work out, and expects the main hero to arrive and pull out the sword. Just as they hope for the Chosen One's arrival, the magic seal appears, exciting Cid as he anticipates the arrival of the chosen hero. However, Nelson appears, and Cid wonders if it's one of those scenarios where the villain arrives first. Cid also notices Olivier, and thinks she resembles Alpha. Nelson sends Olivier to attack them, and Cid confronts her. Olivier attacks Cid, who initially manages to block her strikes. However, she eventually sends him flying and shatters his sword. Cid is excited, and Olivier launches another attack, injuring Cid. Nelson is annoyed that Cid is still alive, and orders Olivier to finish him off. Just then, Aurora intervenes, pleading with Cid to stop. Although she doesn't remember well, she knows that no human can defeat Olivier. She tells Cid that he has done enough, and given her more new memories than she could have asked for. Nelson offers her a deal: if she agrees to help him with their work, he will spare Cid. Cid interrupts their conversation, telling her that he doesn't need assistance, and that they shouldn't assume he will lose. Annoyed, Nelson orders Olivier to kill him, and as she stabs Cid with her sword, Cid smiles and opens his right eye, which he had kept closed for some time, mentioning that he has got her. He grabs her and bites her neck, ripping it and defeating her. Nelson wonders how he's still alive after being stabbed, and Cid explains that if you protect your arteries and vital organs, it's easy to survive a stabbing. Nelson mentions that he is surprised to see Olivier getting defeated by a kid with no magic, but he states that she was just a copy. With the amount of magic he has in the center of the sanctuary, he summons countless copies of Olivier. Many copies attack Cid, but he opens his right eye, and defeats them using his magic. Nelson is surprised that he is able to use magic, and Cid explains that he just tampered with the magic until it was too solid to be absorbed. It took him some time, but it's something simple. Nelson is shocked, and orders the Olivier copies to kill him. Cid fights them, but as his wound continues to bleed, he tells them that playtime is over. He starts casting his magic, and Aurora is surprised by the amount of magic he has. Just then, a copy of Olivier stabs him. However, Cid is unaffected and uses his atomic move to obliterate all Olivier copies, along with the chain door and everything else. Cid wakes up with Aurora by his side. She is surprised that he survived being stabbed in the heart, and Cid explains that he used magic to move his heart to the other side. Aurora starts disappearing and confesses that she was the one who called him. She mentions that she lied about other things as well, but Cid is fine with it. Aurora states that for a long time, she wanted to fade away and forget everything, but now she has a memory she doesn't want to forget. She hoped she got more time for their plot development, but her time is up, and she thanks Cid before completely disappearing. Alexia feels frustrated for being weak, and unable to do anything. She suggests to Rose and Beta that they gather more information before deciding on their course of action. Beta questions what Alexia intends to do with the information, and Alexia suggests that they might be able to join forces and establish a base of operations. Beta states that they have no solid plan, but Rose is on board, and Beta also agrees to form a team. Beta humorously mentions that they already have a team with a hero, a wise woman, and a deadweight, to which Alexia playfully asks if Beta is referring to herself as the deadweight. Epsilon reports to Alpha that the sanctuary has been obliterated, including the holy sword, and the magical core has vaporized. Alpha acknowledges that it was the simplest and most effective solution, one that only Shadow could have achieved. Epsilon also reveals that Beta is working with Alexia, and that if things go well, Beta can infiltrate her inner circle. Epsilon further confirms their theory that Aurora has another name, the Demon Diablos. Alpha then instructs her to be ready for their next performance in the royal capital of Midgar. Meanwhile, a man tries to persuade Gamma to buy prime property in Madlid, and open her business there. Initially unsure, Gamma's decision becomes clear when one of her employees informs her that they have found petroleum. She decides to purchase every property on that street, with plans to redevelop the city and make it the greatest in Velgalta. Back at the Shadow Garden base, Alpha observes her team, and recalls an earlier time with Cid when they established their first base of operations. She tells him that they need to start training the girls, as they will soon be facing the cult. Cid mentions that he will give them power, and thinks that kids living on their own should know some self-defense techniques. In the present, Alpha receives a message from the Oriana Kingdom, indicating that the Royal Chancellor, Perv Asshat, is visiting Midgar. We then see Alexia and Iris in the hot bath, where Alexia explains to Iris that the Archbishop was part of the cult. To keep the sanctuary a secret, they need a significant organization, and Alexia wants to investigate the divine teaching. Iris had suggested the same thing to their father, but he told them not to take any action. However, Iris feels that if she wins the Bushan festival again, she will gain more support from the people, and their father will have to listen to her. Alexia wonders if the cult or Shadow Garden will get involved, but Iris is confident in her sword skills. Iris wonders why Alexia went into the sanctuary, but Alexia pretends to act dumb, and excuses herself. Iris reflects that her Crimson Knights lost their strongest members as soon as they were organized, and likely won't be able to rebuild. The Knight Order had been supporting her, but she believes they now hate her for taking their strongest members, and letting them die. She hopes to regain her status by winning the tournament. Just then, she hears a noise, which came from Alexia using the towel to clean her plot, using the trick she learned from Cid. We then see Rose training, however, she starts to feel strange, and a demonic possession mark appears on her chest. After that, we see that the Bushan festival is starting, and strong warriors from all over the world are gathering. Cid also wants to enter the tournament, not to compete as a strong fighter, but to experience how an overpowered MC pretends to be weak, and then surprises everyone with his hidden strength. He visits Gamma, and asks for her help in creating a disguise for him to enter the festival. When she questions why he needs a disguise, Cid mentions that it's a secret. Gamma uses a special slime gel to apply on his face, and mentions that it will reshape to his desired appearance. She shows him pictures of various looks, and Cid asks for the one that makes him appear the weakest. Gamma suggests a character named Mundane Man, a lazy dark knight with no skills, disowned by his noble family, and considered dead for the past 5 years. Cid finds it perfect, and Gamma uses a machine built by Ada to transform him accordingly. Cid is impressed with the transformation, and adjusts his posture to match his new character. Cid reflects on Gamma's intelligence, noting that she remembers all the knowledge he shared with her, but he also considers her a bit clumsy. Back at the Bushan festival, people recognize Anne Rose, who had previously managed to summon an ancient warrior at the goddess trial. She observes Cid in his mundane man disguise, taking note of his cheap gear and sickly appearance. She thinks he is an amateur, and advises him not to participate in the festival. Cid tells her that he should not be judged by appearances, and claims he doesn't need her help. Satisfied with how well his disguise works, he walks away. However, he is soon stopped by Quentin, who insists that Cid should listen to Anne Rose's advice. He mentions that he is an experienced participant in previous Bushan festivals, who has encountered weaklings like Cid before, and suggests that he should simply go home and suck on his mommy milkers.
That one there was a violation personally.
Cid provokes Quentin by mentioning that at least he is stronger than him, which infuriates Quentin. In response, Quentin picks Cid up, and punches him into an alley. Cid thinks that he can easily defeat Quentin in several ways, but he has no intention of fighting him at the moment, and lets Quentin beat him up. Anne Rose eventually intervenes to stop Quentin, and apologizes to Cid. He tells her that she could have stopped the fight at any moment, but she mentions that she allowed Quentin to beat him up so that Cid would give up, which will avoid major injury at the festival. As Cid leaves, she introduces herself and inquires about Cid's name, to which he responds with "Mundane Man." Cid later meets Skell, who is interested in placing bets, and winning money on the tournament. Skell explains the tournament structure, with preliminaries leading to the main tournament, and provides information about the favored fighters, which are Iris and Rose. Cid wants to showcase his powers later, but doesn't want to hold back too much either, and thinks about a way. Skell asks him for funds, but he distracts him with his souvenir from Lindworm, and then rejects him. While Cid is walking away, Rose approaches him, and shares details about her friendship with Alexia and Beta. She also reveals her upcoming meeting with her father, during which she will be introduced to her fiancé, Perv Asshat. Rose explains her background as a princess from a land of art and culture, mentioning how her decision to become a knight disappointed, and betrayed many people. She recalls being inspired by a hero when she was a child, which led her to take up the sword. Despite the challenges and betrayals she has faced, Rose refuses to abandon her ideals. She asks Cid if he will continue to believe in her, and he assures her that he will. Later on, we see Skell and Cid watching the fights together. Skell mentions that he is collecting data to improve his betting strategies, explaining how he calculates odds for more successful bets. However, he admits that he needs some funds to achieve 100% accuracy. At this point, a fighter named Goldie Gilded appears behind them, revealing that he also analyzes data to enhance his chances of winning. Cid excuses himself for a bathroom break, and the next fight is announced between Gonzalez Machamber against Mundane Man. Goldie decides to analyze the fight, and assumes that Gonzalez's battle power is 1364, while he thinks that Mundane Man's battle power will be only 33. Goldie anticipates Gonzalez winning quickly, and Skell is impressed by his deduction skills. As the fight begins, however, Gonzalez unexpectedly falls to the ground. The crowd assumes he tripped and lost, disappointing their expectations. Cid is announced as the winner, further disappointing the crowd, who bet against him. However, Anne Rose realizes how Cid landed 2 quick punches on Gonzalez's chin, knocking him out. Goldie pretends that he had foreseen this outcome, and explains to Skell the strategy of either betting on fighters with higher battle power or identifying the weaker ones, and betting on their opponents. He suggests that Skell bet on his match against Cid the following day. When Cid returns from his bathroom break, Skell asks him to lend him all of his money so he can bet on Goldie, but Cid declines. The next morning, Skell knocks on Cid's door, and shows him newspaper headlines reporting that Rose has stabbed her fiancé, Perv Asshat, and ran away. Alexia and Beta evaluate Rose's situation. The Oriana Kingdom prefers to handle it internally, and has asked the Midgar Kingdom not to intervene. Beta mentions that since Perv Asshat is the second son of the Oriana Kingdom's dukes, Rose could face a severe sentence. Alexia believes that Rose's royal status would likely spare her from the death penalty, and is determined to locate her before the Oriana Kingdom does, to hear her side of the story. However, Beta suggests that Rose may have chosen not to disclose anything to avoid complicating matters for them. Alexia understands this, which is why she feels frustrated, given they are sworn allies. She instructs Beta to gather more information while she decides to seek advice from her sister. After Alexia leaves, Beta tells one of her sisters to provide Alexia with enough details about Perv Asshat which will keep her occupied, and prevent her from taking potentially troublesome actions. Beta receives information that Rose has made it through the sewers, and is currently in the underground ruins. She also learns that Rose was seen reaching out to her chest many times as she fled. Meanwhile, at the Bushan festival, we find Cid reading a newspaper article about Rose being suspected of eloping, and he briefly wonders if she had a boyfriend. He secretly hopes for a hidden conflict unfolding behind the tournament, which will allow him to assume his role as Eminence in Shadow. As he is leaving, he encounters a person named Beatrix, who detects the scent of an elf on him, and questions whether he has seen her niece who resembles her. Cid realizes that she looks like Alpha, but denies any knowledge of such an individual. Beatrix draws her sword, but Cid is aware that she won't actually harm him. He acts like a weak background character in response. Beatrix apologizes for her mistake, and remarks that she had believed him to be stronger. She adds that he has good hands, and will grow stronger with time. Afterward, during the Bushan festival, we see Quentin approaching Anne Rose, who is there to observe Cid. He questions her opinion of Cid's fight from the previous day. Anne Rose responds that it initially appeared as if Cid's opponent had tripped and fallen, but it didn't seem like mere luck to her. Quentin asks her for further insights, and addresses her as Velgada's Seven Blades. She informs him that she has abandoned that title, and regarding Cid's fight, she mentions that his movements were too fast for her to track clearly. However, she did manage to catch a glimpse of his hand in motion. They both wonder if he might be using some sort of artifact, but they think that it will become clearer in his upcoming match against Goldie, who is regarded as an unbeaten legend. Quentin wonders if Goldie is actually unbeaten, and Anne Rose reveals that he tends to forfeit when matched against opponents stronger than himself. As the match starts, Goldie charges toward Cid, swinging his sword aggressively. We then hear a crack sound, and see that Cid has easily dodged his attack. Goldie realizes that he's left himself wide open, and Cid can strike him down, but Cid merely draws his sword without making any offensive moves, allowing Goldie to step back. Quentin thought that Goldie would win, but he's not sure what happened. Anne Rose explains that just before Goldie's sword reached Cid, he had cracked his neck at the exact time evading the strike, and they both struggle to believe that this was a mere coincidence. Goldie believes that Cid missed his chance to defeat him, and he decides to use his ultimate move and charges toward Cid. However, we see that Goldie is blown away, and ultimately defeated. Quentin wonders what happened, and Anne Rose clarifies that, as Goldie was about to strike, Cid sneezed, and at that very moment, his sword swung downward, resulting in an accidental strike. Quentin thinks it's ridiculous, and hopes to get answers when he faces Cid, while Anne Rose is impressed by Cid, and tries to imitate his moves. Later, Iris presents Lord Perv with the security plan for the Bushan festival scheduled for the following week. However, he doesn't seem to think it's necessary. Iris remarks that he looks well, despite the news of his recent injury, and Lord Perv suggests that the story may have been exaggerated. He's aware how Iris personally went looking after her sister when she was kidnapped, and mentions that they left the Oriana Kingdom and family matters to them. The king also agrees with him, although he appears as if he's brainwashed. Back at the Bushan festival, Cid has defeated Quentin, leaving the spectators wondering how he keeps winning. Meanwhile, Skell is seen requesting funds from Poe, as it appears he has lost all of his bets. As Cid walks away from his match, he thinks that the last fighter was familiar, but couldn't recall who he was. Just then, he encounters Anne Rose, who admits that she had underestimated his strength. She informs him that she has observed all of his moves, and warns him not to assume that he can win using the same tactics against her. Cid responds with a smile, and removes his armor, which creates a hole in the ground. And Rose is shocked to realize that he had been wearing weighted chains, and holding back all this time. He tells her that playtime is over, but she tells him not to assume that he won, and cracks her neck. As Cid walks away, he wonders what she was trying to do. Meanwhile, we see Rose engaged in a battle against a soldier in a tunnel. She defeats him, and makes her escape. After that, we see Cid fighting in the arena, and tells his opponent that he has only shown 22 milliwatts of his power. However, he then thinks if it's 32 grams or 3 yards, and then it's revealed that this was all his imagination. He's trying to perfect his cringe dialogues, which he will use in his fights. Just then, Skell comes knocking on his door, stating he has a plan to get rich fast. He shows that there is a 10 million zeni reward for turning Rose in, and 500,000 for giving information about her location, and he wants Cid's help to find her. Cid sees that his sister is visiting, and he accepts Skell's proposal to avoid her. As he is walking around, Cid hears someone playing the piano, and recalls how he was forced to learn to play the piano. Initially, he thought he would have rather spent the time on training, but in time, he found it to be really cool. He realizes that the music being played is the Moonlight Sonata, which is his favorite piece, and wonders how it can exist in this world. He thinks it's another reincarnated person, but Cid is surprised to see that it's Epsilon. Later, Cid asks if she was playing the Moonlight Sonata, and she confirms it, saying that it's her favorite piece of all the ones he taught her, although he never taught her anything. She tells him that she has received rewards for her music composition, and has gained connections with influential people. She mentions that she has been invited to the Oriana Kingdom as a music composer, and Cid realizes that she gained fame by plagiarizing all the music he showed her. He asks her if she knows where Rose is hiding, and she mentions that Beta is working on that case, but she heard Rose is hiding in the tunnels under the royal capital. As he leaves, he notices a piano and thinks of something. Meanwhile, Beta shares some information with Alexia, suspecting that Lord Perv is working with a cult, and they are heading down the tunnels. Beta mentions that normal evidence wouldn't be enough as it involves both the government and the church. Alexia mentions that Iris told her that the King of Oriana didn't seem affected by Rose's actions, and that he appeared absent-minded. Beta wonders where Alexia is leading them, and she explains that they are heading to the underground passage, as there is a chance that Rose had used them to escape. Alexia mentions that the underground is a giant maze, and Beta is worried about how they would get out, to which she states they will just return the way they came, and Beta wonders why she had to be the one to babysit this crazy princess. Rose recalls how she met her father and Lord Perv the other day. When she saw her father, she knew something was wrong with him, and then saw Perv and the guards smiling. She drew her sword, and attacked Perv, but they all yelled that she went mad, and started chasing her. As she ran away, Perv told her to turn herself in before the festival is over, or he will have her father kill one of the guests of honor. She realizes that she didn't make a rational choice, and was driven by anger and desperation. She knows that Perv is just one of the cult members whose roots have already grown too deep within the Oriana Kingdom. She wishes to eliminate Perv, free her father, and then marry Cid, but thinks that none of her dreams will come true as she is possessed now. She then hears someone playing the Moonlight Sonata, and finds out that Shadow is playing it. As he finishes, Rose explains that she had heard the Moonlight Sonata many times, but this was the best performance she had ever heard. Shadow asks her what she hopes to accomplish, and Rose states that she wants to protect her kingdom, but couldn't do anything. He tells her that if she still has the will, he can give her power. Rose accepts because there are things she wants to do, and people to protect. Shadow gives her power, and heals her possession. He tells her that true strength lies not in one's power, but in one's way of being. After Shadow leaves, some members of the cult show up, and Rose defeats them easily. Alexia and Beta feel the burst of magic, and they find Rose. They ask about the burst of magic, and Rose tells them that she obtained power but refuses to reveal anything else, as she doesn't want them to get involved in her mess. As Rose keeps refusing to say anything, Alexia draws her sword, stating she will make her talk. Rose and Alexia start fighting, but eventually, Rose defeats Alexia. Rose leaves Alexia to Beta, who wishes her the best, and tells her that their paths will cross again soon. As Rose leaves, Beta wonders if this is what Lord Shadow has chosen for her. We then see the police investigating the disappearance of the piano in broad daylight. Later, Cid is walking home thinking that his performance went well, and as he reaches, he is surprised to see his sister still waiting for him. After that we see them in bed with Claire on top of Cid, but they are not developing plot. Claire chokes Cid, as she is furious that he keeps breaking his promises, and Cid tells her that he will try to become a person who can keep his word. She releases him, and hands him a ticket to the Bushan festival. Claire has been selected to represent the Academy in place of Princess Rose, and asks him to attend and watch her fight, confident that she will become the next champion. Alexia learns that Beta has moved out, and gone abroad for research, but left her a file with information about the Oriana Kingdom. Cid arrives at the Bushan festival, and realizes that the ticket he received is for VIP class. As he proceeds to his seat, he spots Iris and mistakenly assumes he's made an error. Iris, recognizing him as Claire's brother, tells him he's in the correct seat. She tells him that she plans on taking Claire to her personal order when she graduates. Iris also apologizes to Cid for the incident involving Alexia's kidnapping, and all students are noticing this, which worries Cid, as this is not normal for a background character like him. Iris hopes that the incident hasn't affected his friendship with Alexia, and tells him that Alexia is very happy to have made such a good friend, but Cid thinks otherwise. Some students ask Iris if any competitor has caught her eye, and Iris mentions it's Anne Rose, but states her determination to win the tournament herself. Cid wonders if there is someone else who caught her eye, like Mundane Man, but the students think that he is just an amateur, who is just fast and lucky with no skill, and Cid is excited that he cultivated Mundane's reputation to perfection. Iris explains that another person has captured her interest, the first Bushan Festival champion, an elf sword master hailed as the war goddess. Despite her reputation, this competitor will not be participating in the tournament. The students realize that Iris is referring to Beatrix, who has maintained a low profile for over a decade. Cid recalls Beatrix, and he knew she was strong, but didn't know she was famous. Cid then excuses himself, and leaves. He feels the presence of someone strong, but is unable to reveal he knows it, as he is currently a background character. Beatrix then shows up after him, and Cid acts surprised. Beatrix wonders if he was ignoring her, but Cid denies it. She asks him if he ran into an elf that looks like her, but Cid plays dumb. She came to the festival to search for her niece, as there will be a lot of people attending. Cid then notices that she has bought too many burgers and offers one to Cid, who then gives her one of his in return. Meanwhile, Perv takes his seat next to Iris and explains that his king will be attending the festival tomorrow. He inquires about Iris's father, Claus Midgar, and Iris informs him that her father will be attending the festival tomorrow. Perv notices that Anne Rose is about to fight, and asks what Iris thinks about her opponent. Iris mentions that he doesn't appear very strong, but he seems to have absolute confidence, which isn't normally seen in a weak fighter. The fight begins, and Anne Rose quickly closes the distance, launching a series of attacks. However, Cid easily blocks, and dodges her strikes. She sees an opportunity to defeat him and strikes, but Cid suddenly appears behind her, telling her that it was merely an afterimage. Cid gains the upper hand, and Anne Rose realizes that her only option is to attempt a counterattack. As Cid launches an attack, she makes her move, but Cid expertly dodges it, leading her to realize that he was matching his moves with hers. Finally, Cid slashes her, and Anne Rose is defeated. Perv states that Iris was right, and she is surprised that someone as strong as Mundane remained unnoticed for so long. Perv asks if she can beat him, and she tells him that if this is the best he can do, then he won't be a match for her. However, there is a good chance that he is hiding something, which is why he disguised his stance and technique throughout the tournament. After leaving, Perv tells his man to investigate Mundane, as it could be a problem if he is backed by the Lawless city. His man wonders if he is part of Shadow Garden, but Perv dismisses the idea as he is a man. Later, Enrose tells Cid that she thought she had become stronger, but he taught her a good lesson. She thanks him for the experience, and asks how he became so strong. Cid responds that he's merely a fool who abandoned everything in pursuit of strength. Enrose suggests that he consider government service in Velgata, but he declines the offer. Later, Iris defeats a fighter, and she notices Beatrix. Iris follows her, and introduces herself. Beatrix offers her a burger, but she refuses. The scene then shifts to Cid, who is walking home, and feeling satisfied that he had the opportunity to display his stylish sword moves. He reflects that he has accomplished 70% of his plan at the Bushan festival, and wonders how to finish it. After defeating Iris, he can just disappear, stating his work is done. Alternatively, he wonders if he should take the evil route, and act like an assassin from a shadowy organization, and engage in a free-for-all battle. As he reaches home, he finds Claire waiting for him again. She asks if he had fun watching her match, and Cid realizes that he's in trouble. After that, we see Iris practicing and reflecting on her journey from being a young child who won her first battle to the person she has become. After the incident at the academy, she wanted to gather proof against the divine teachings, but her father prevented her from taking any actions. She is determined to achieve results, and win the tournament. Cid has started to enjoy the VIP class, as he gets everything for free. Iris approaches, and asks if he's there to support his sister, to which Cid confirms. She notices that he's drinking coffee, and mentions that she likes the aroma, but not the bitter taste. Cid suggests trying to add milk and sugar, and when she does, she finds the coffee delicious. Just then, we hear the guard stopping a woman carrying a sword, and instructing her to surrender it. Iris tells the guard that she invited her, and addresses her as the war goddess Beatrix, causing excitement among the crowd. Beatrix takes the opportunity to inquire if anyone has seen her niece, but no one has. They also ask Beatrix if anyone has caught her attention, and she mentions Cid. She thinks that he will grow stronger, but some students mention that he's not even as strong as his sister. Iris trusts Beatrix's judgment, and they look forward to Cid's future. We then see Perv drugging the king. Although it's effective, it creates a stinky odor, and instructs his men to mask it with perfume. He is confident that Rose will attempt to save her father, and considering her signs of possession, she will also make a good candidate for the cult's experiments. If Rose doesn't appear, he plans to use the king of Oriana to kill the king of Midgar, which will cause a war between the kingdoms, and result in the destruction of Oriana Kingdom. They have already planned to install a puppet leader as the new king of Midgar, and believe that Iris's match might be the ideal time to act. However, he is concerned about Mundane Man, as he couldn't find any information about him, and worries about his potential danger. He is also concerned about the potential involvement of Shadow Garden and Rose. As he enters the VIP area, he passes by Beatrix, who tells him that he stinks, and the king as well. Perv becomes angry but stops when Iris intervenes, revealing Beatrix as her guest. Perv then recognizes Beatrix, who may have awakened the hero's blood within her. Beatrix apologizes, and Perv realizes he may need to eliminate her as well. He wonders if he can successfully assassinate the king of Midgar, but thinks that it will go as planned if Rose shows up. Claire emerges victorious in her fight, and Iris prepares for her match against Cid. As the battle begins, Iris feels that her head was cut down, and jumps backward in surprise. She realizes her actions, regains her composure, and stands up. At that moment, she feels like her leg was cut down, and she realizes that the entire arena is within Cid's striking range. Meanwhile, Rose approaches the VIP seating area, but encounters dead cult members. Beta and other members of Shadow Garden appear behind her, asking her to proceed, and fulfill her mission. Iris continues to feel overwhelmed by Cid's attacks and backs away in fear. She notices the look in his eyes, and his slight shift in his center of gravity, which is probably making her hallucinate that he struck her. She realizes it's not some artifact effect, but pure skill. She then unleashes her full power, and charges to attack him. As she's about to attack, she notices that his sword hasn't been sheathed, and wonders if it's another illusion. Cid dodges her sword with his bare hands, and grabs her throat. He takes her down, placing his sword at her neck. Perv can't believe Iris lost without even making a single move. Beatrix is also impressed, and wants to fight him. Just then, Rose arrives and apologizes to her father for her actions. King Oriana forgives her, leaving Perv shocked as he didn't instruct the king to say such words. Rose cries, and lunges at Perv, who uses the king as a shield. However, Rose proceeds and stabs the king, and in his last moments, the king tells Rose that he loves her. Perv is shocked to see Rose kill her father, and then sees her holding her blade against her neck. He orders his men to stop her, and just then Cid comes in, breaking the window, asking Rose if this is the choice she made. He cuts down Perv's men, and reveals himself as Shadow. Rose recognizes his fencing style. She recalls the time when Shadow saved her from bandits when they were kids, and told his name as Stylish Bandit Slayer. He tells her that her fight has not yet ended, and she escapes from there. Perv calls for his guards, but everyone is dead. Just then, Beatrix decides to step in, and jumps at Shadow as they clash swords. The king's men have safely evacuated all the guests, but they have concerns that the battle may extend beyond the stadium, and the king considers declaring martial law. He is informed that Perv has already retreated back to Oriana Kingdom. The king instructs his men to communicate with the anti-chancellor faction when returning the body of the king of Oriana. Some of his men express concerns that contacting the anti-chancellor faction could potentially lead to a civil war, but the king believes that it is necessary to strengthen their defenses. We then see Shadow engaged in a battle with Beatrix. He easily gets behind her, and she struggles to keep up with his movements. Iris intervenes, expressing her desire to join the fight. She draws a blade, and Shadow realizes that it's an artifact. He asks her if she's using it as her clutch, which annoys her. She turns the blade into a large fire sword, and swings at him. He dodges her attack, and mocks that she can use it in festivals due to its stunning visuals. Beatrix joins the battle as well, and Shadow continues to fight both her and Iris. Shadow wields two crowbars to block both of their attacks, and mentions that crowbars indeed have potential. The battle takes place on top of a train, and Shadow advises them to be cautious not to fall. Meanwhile, Rose manages to escape from the stadium, and is uncertain about her next move. Alpha suddenly appears before Rose, presenting her with two options, either to continue fighting alone or to join forces with Shadow Garden. Rose asks if they can save Oriana Kingdom, and Alpha explains that they won't be taking any action unless Rose proves her worth. After thinking for a moment, Rose decides to join Shadow Garden. As Beatrix and Shadow battle, Beatrix wonders if they've met before. Shadow mentions that he remembers powerful opponents, and questions whether they are strong enough for him to remember. He jumps into the river, controlling the water with magic and shooting it at them. However, he notices that magic doesn't flow as smoothly in ordinary water. Shadow kicks Iris into the river, but Beatrix continues to attack. She manages to break one of Shadow's crowbars during their intense fight. They eventually reach a tower, where Shadow gets behind Beatrix, but she skillfully blocks his attack. Shadow acknowledges that in terms of sword skills, they are almost equal, however, her use of magic needs to be improved. Iris re-enters the fight, attacking Shadow. Iris then plans to immobilize Shadow with her attack, at the cost of her life, and asks Beatrix to use that opportunity to take him down. However, Shadow proves to be a formidable opponent. He kicks Iris in the chin with his knee. Beatrix charges her attack, but he evades her strike and takes control of the situation. He slams both Iris and Beatrix to the ground, and then proceeds to stomp on them. As he prepares to leave, Iris manages to stand up and confronts him. She mentions that by now, every knight in the city should have mobilized against him, effectively turning everyone in the entire kingdom into his enemy. She declares that she wouldn't let him escape, but Shadow merely laughs, and questions why he should run. He activates his magic, which covers the entire city. He declares that playtime is over, and unleashes his attack. However, this time it was just for a show, and he leaves. Witnessing Shadow's overwhelming power, Iris drops to her knees, overwhelmed with emotion, and begins to cry. Later, we see Sherry reading in the newspaper that the demon Shadow was repelled by Iris and Beatrix, while Rose is now wanted for the murder of her father. In another scene, Perv apologizes to a man for his failure, and he is confident that Rose will return to save her kingdom. As Beatrix prepares to leave, she offers Iris advice not to take her defeat too seriously. She also expresses a bit of disappointment about not finding her niece, but believes that she got to experience some nice things. Following these events, Shadow Garden receives news that the Midgar Kingdom is actively searching for Shadow. Beta thinks that it might be part of his plan to act as a decoy to prevent their involvement in the Oriana Kingdom. With the new school term underway, Cid is curious about Skell's whereabouts, and Poe explains that Skell has taken on a long-term job. Poe regrets being outside the city when the demon Shadow appeared, as he missed the opportunity to comfort the frightened girls. Meanwhile, Rose and Alpha have arrived at Baron Kagenu's domain. Alpha informs Rose that they will venture deeper into the woods, where the region is infested with magical beasts. Alpha shares that Shadow defeated the Mist Dragon in the nearby mountains, earning him the title of ruler of that realm, and he bathed in the dragon's breath. Their journey leads them to the ancient city of Alexandria, which serves as Shadow Garden's base of operations. Here, Alpha takes Rose to meet Lambda, a trainer within Shadow Garden. Lambda introduces Rose to squad members 664 and 665, designating Rose as number 666. Lambda proceeds to cut Rose's clothes, symbolizing her transformation into a pure and dedicated soldier, leaving behind her name, and all other attachments. Lastly, we see Shadow playing his favorite piece on the piano, and thinks about his next cringe-worthy line that he can use in the future. Later, we see Beta giving a report, and we learn that after the Bushan festival, there has been no activity from the Diablos cult. Additionally, Midgar Kingdom and other smaller sects are also keeping quiet after the incident. The girls mention that everything is going according to Shadow's plan, and they can now focus on the situation in the Oriana Kingdom. However, they inform him that recently, there has been a sudden increase in the money flow in the Lawless city, and this city is not governed by any of the nations. The Lawless city is a giant slum where the forces of evil, wealth, and power converge. If trouble continues to rise in the Lawless city, it could have a serious impact on the society, so they might need to send more forces there. Shadow mentions that he can smell it, referring to the trouble. However, the girls wonder if he is referring to them, and they check to see if they stink, with some even spraying perfume.
Women.
The girls notice that the moon's color has changed to red, and they mention the legend of the Red Moon. 1,000 years ago, during a red moon, a major disaster struck in the Lawless city, and if it occurs again all surrounding nations will suffer. Shadow, being the ultimate gold digger, can't ignore matters involving money, so he tells them that he will look into it. Others worry about him going alone, but he reassures them that everything will be fine. The girls wish him the best, and Beta is writing everything down for her novel. Shadow then thinks that all the story about the Red Moon is made up, and the girls are just putting up quite an act worthy of an Academy Award. Later, we see Quentin and Goldie, the warriors from the Bushan festival who were defeated by Cid, arriving at the Crimson Tower in the Lawless city. Quentin mentions that the tower is ruled by the Blood Queen, and they notice that no one dares to approach the castle. Just then, a guard appears and tells them that only servants, guests of the Blood Queen, or powerful warriors are allowed to enter, and they don't fit into any of these categories. They inform the guard that they're not servants or guests but powerful warriors who came to hunt the Blood Queen, and the guard laughs. He removes his cloak, revealing his severed arm, mentioning that this is the result of challenging the Blood Queen. Ever since then, he has been reduced to a pathetic watchdog. They learn that the guard was known as the White Devil, who has a huge bounty on his head, but in this place, he is nothing more than a watchdog. The guard mocks them, and they engage in battle. The scene cuts to the next morning, and we see Cid, who is being dragged along by his sister Claire in the Lawless city. He recalls how Claire won the bushan tournament, and during the celebration, Claire told him that she is going to the Lawless city to exterminate vampires. She brought him along to bulk up his resume, so she can recommend him for the Midgar Knight Order in the future. Cid then realizes that he has never thought about his career path, but he doesn't care about the job as long as he has his freedom. On the way, they are interrupted by a slave trader who shows them the slaves he's trying to sell. We then see that it's Quentin and Goldie, and it appears they got beaten down by the White Devil. Cid thinks they look familiar, but can't recall where he's seen them before. Claire mentions that she doesn't need slaves as she already has all the pets she needs, referring to Cid, and she walks away. Cid wonders why she is dragging him, and she mentions that if she doesn't hold on to him, he will get lost, but he denies it. Later, we see that Cid is lost, and just then, a man bumps into him, attempting to steal his wallet. However, Cid uses his slime ability to instantly recover his wallet, along with the robber's wallet as well. Just then, another man tries the same thing, and Cid repeats the process on him. As he walks through the street, the same thing keeps happening, and by the end of the day, he has quite a collection. He is surprised that he managed to make so much money just by taking a walk, and thinks that this city is a heaven for him. Then he sees some men attacking a ghoul, thinking that it's almost dead. However, just as the moon turns red, Cid notices a surge of magical energy. The ghoul suddenly gains strength and attacks the men, turning them into ghouls. The ghouls then try to attack Cid, who is still thinking whether to kill the ghoul or not, and decides to let things get a bit out of hand before he intervenes. However, just then, a girl named Mary appears and kills the ghouls. She introduces herself as an ancient vampire hunter and warns Cid to run away if he values his life, mentioning that the frenzy has begun and they're running out of time due to the red moon. She leaves, and Cid is left thrilled by her words. We then see Claire, who is pissed that Cid left the room. Just then, she sees a ghoul attacking a man. She decapitates the ghoul, and asks the man about Cid. He informs her that he hasn't seen anyone, and she leaves. The man then suddenly realizes that he has been holding onto the ghoul's body. We then see Skell and Poe, who are in a red light district in the Lawless city, hoping to finally lose their V-card. Just then, they are pushed from behind, and realize that it's the ghouls. We then see a girl, named Marie from the same area who wakes up from a scream, and thinks that it might be her client. However, she hears a commotion in the streets, and sees that ghouls are attacking the city. Her client has also turned into a ghoul, and approaches to attack her. Suddenly, Shadow appears, breaking through the window, and kills the ghoul, saving her. He repeats the same dialogue about the frenzy that Mary had told him, and leaves. Another girl rushes in upon hearing the commotion, and learns that Marie was saved by Shadow. She explains that Shadow is evil and dangerous, but Marie thinks otherwise. Marie then decides to grab her belongings and leave the town. The girl warns her about the possible consequences of breaking the contract, but Marie remains determined to leave. We then see a fox girl named Yuki Mei, receiving a report that vampires and ghouls are attacking the city. The scene shifts to Cid's sister, who found a dead person resembling Cid and apologized to it, thinking it's Cid. Mary approached her and inquired if she was the one asking around about a boy with black hair and black eyes. Cid's sister mentioned that she had already found him, but Mary told her that the dead person didn't match her description, making Claire realize that it wasn't Cid. Mary mentioned that she had seen two boys who matched her description, one of whom was smiling in front of the ghouls, and the other was a young dark knight who was taken away by the vampires. Claire thought that Cid could never smile in that situation, and concluded that the second man must be her brother. Mary then revealed that he was in the Crimson Tower, and would be offered as a sacrifice to awaken the Blood Queen. She explained that a young boy's blood would awaken the Queen, who had been asleep for 1,000 years, and Claire decided to cooperate with Mary to save her brother. Meanwhile, Goldie was seen running, carrying Quentin, while Skell and Poe were also running for their lives, hoping that they wouldn't die before losing their V-cards. We then see a man called Juggernaut, who is very excited about the upcoming battle, and thinks it's been a long time since he saw such a battle. In another scene, some knights were trying to escape, and a female knight called them cowards for leaving. Just then, a large number of vampires attacked them, but suddenly they were all killed by Shadow, who repeated the same dialogue about the frenzy. After that, we see a man informing his leader, named Crimson, that everything is going according to their plan, but they are facing a little resistance in some areas. Crimson mentions that he is aware of the power of Yukime and Juggernaut, and thinks that they are no match for him. However, his servant mentions that there was one more person who was going around, and killing ghouls. Meanwhile, we see Juggernaut and Yukime killing zombies, and they also attack each other. As they began fighting, Shadow appeared with his dashing entry, and introduced himself. Afterward, Juggernaut heads toward the tower and destroys the tower wall. Shadow repeats the frenzied dialogue to them, and they wonder if he's talking about the Red Moon legend. Juggernaut doesn't care about it and moves forward. Yukime has heard about Shadow helping out her girls, so she hopes to stay on friendly terms and leave. Meanwhile, the White Devil recalls how he used to think that he was at the top of the food chain, and killing people gave meaning to his life, but his arrogance caused him to become a pathetic watchdog. All he wants now is to kill someone, and then he notices Juggernaut and Yukime entering the tower. He knows that he's no match for them, and then sees Shadow. He doesn't sense any power from him, and thinks that he's weaker than him. The White Devil jumps in to attack, but we see that he has been cut into pieces. Shadow repeats his frenzied dialogue again, and the White Devil wonders who this overpowered cringe lord is. We then see Beta reading some books in the library at the Crimson Tower, accompanied by Rose and other Shadow Garden girls. She thinks that the cult's level of technology is extraordinary, but wonders how they found such technology to control the demon's power. Just then, Claire and Marie fall into the library through a secret door that Claire accidentally triggered. Beta then tells them that although she's supposed to kill all witnesses, she can't kill Claire, and Claire is surprised that she knows her. Beta mentions that she's doing some research there and needs a sample of blood from the Blood Queen, as they believe that the blood of vampire and the possessed are the same, but split due to bloodline changes. Marie denies it, and Beta calls her a 1,000-year vampire hunter, making Marie realize that they know about her as well. Claire then asks Beta if the possessed can be cured, but Beta tells her not to worry about it. Claire decides to leave, mentioning that she needs to save her brother, and Rose is shocked. She tries to ask for more information, but Beta stops her. Claire and Marie leave, and Rose apologizes for stepping out of line. Beta assures her that Shadow will take care of the Blood Queen, so she shouldn't worry about Cid. The scene then cuts to Marie decapitating a vampire's head, while Claire finishes it off by piercing its heart. As they move forward, Claire thinks that Marie is hiding something from her, as she has lived for over 1,000 years and doesn't look like an elf. Marie mentions that it's known that possessed humans cannot turn back, and yet Claire asked them for a cure. She tells her that everyone has their secrets, and they shouldn't pry into each other. Just then, they see Juggernaut killing the vampires, and Marie mentions that he rose to the top in the Lawless city through violence. She hopes to avoid fighting with him, but Juggernaut notices them and launches an attack. He punches Claire down, and cuts Marie down. Claire then stabs Juggernaut in the leg, and he thinks that she is stronger than most people. Claire sees Marie fatally injured, and tries to help her. Marie stops her, and mentions that she needs Claire's blood. She kisses her, and Claire is surprised by this plot development. Marie then gets healed, and it's revealed that she's a vampire. She attacks Juggernaut, but she's still no match for him. Juggernaut then goes for a final blow, and Claire thinks that it's over for them. Just then, Shadow appears, and kicks Juggernaut out of the tower. He repeats his frenzied dialogue, and Mary is probably wondering if she should give him a copyright strike for using her dialogue. He leaves, and they wonder if he came here to help them. Marie then tells her the story about what happened 1,000 years ago. Initially, vampires ruled, hunting humans and devouring them like animals. Eventually, humans learned their weakness, and they became hunters. During that time, Lady Elizabeth, the Blood Queen, was living among humans as the ruler of a small town. She wanted to live in harmony with the humans, so she gave up on blood. Following the Queen's example, her subjects did the same. As a result, they gradually lost their powers, but gained the ability to walk in the sunlight. Their thirst for blood decreased over time, but it was not the same for the Blood Queen. No matter how far she distanced herself from blood, the thirst for it never left her, and the sunlight would burn her skin. Nevertheless, she still wanted to build a haven where humans and vampires could live together in happiness. Then came the night of the red moon, which comes once every 1,000 years, and gives vampires great power. Crimson took advantage of this situation, and gave Elizabeth a drop of human blood, which turned her into the Blood Queen. She went on a killing spree for 3 days, which made the haven disappear, and 3 kingdoms suffered. When this was over, the Blood Queen realized what she had done, and told Marie to scatter her ash after she died. The Blood Queen then took her own life by stabbing the dagger through her heart, but unlike other vampires she didn't turn to ash, so Marie was never able to fulfill her wish. After that, Crimson took the Blood Queen from her, and spared her life out of respect for her service to the Queen. She has failed the Blood Queen, and now Crimson is trying to use the Blood Queen again for his own ambitions. Claire then mentions that she might be possessed, and states that she came here hoping to help her brother achieve something before she turned into a monster, but because of her, he is in danger right now. Claire thinks that the haven they tried to make was not a mistake, and tells Marie that they should kick Crimson's ass and get the Queen back. Marie is delighted, and mentions they will definitely save her brother. However, Claire states that only she can save her brother, and Marie realizes that Claire has a bro-con. After that, we see Shadow, who has found the tower's treasure, and being a gold digger he is glad to see that vampires have a lot of valuable items here. He intends to live for 300 years, and decides to take what he can using his slime suit, just like Epsilon uses her to make her assets look bigger. He then thinks that he has been showing up late a lot recently, and it's getting old. So, this time he intends to enter the boss battle early before the main characters appear. We then see Crimson trying to revive the Blood Queen, and he plants her heart into the body of a dead young boy. Just then, Shadow appears, and uses his special move to blow up the place. He repeats the same frenzy dialogue, and wonders if they truly have little time left. After that, he sees that Crimson is dead along with the boy who was about to be sacrificed. He wonders if this is one of those events which focuses on group battles instead of a final boss fight and decides to check underground. After he leaves, the heart of the Blood Queen starts acting up, and Claire and Marie arrive. Claire sees the decapitated head of the young boy and wonders who he is. Marie is not able to locate the coffin, and just then she sees Claire being stabbed by the Blood Queen's tentacles. The Queen grabs Claire, and drinks her blood. Beta arrives with Rose and other girls, and they attack the Blood Queen. They behead the Blood Queen and save Claire, but her condition is critical. Beta mentions that since Lord Shadow has not arrived, he must have had other priorities. She thinks that Shadow has entrusted her, so she can't let his sister die. Beta attacks the Blood Queen with Rose and other girls, but Marie mentions that her queen has always been a slow riser due to low blood pressure. Just then, the Blood Queen releases a great magical energy and fully wakes up. Juggernaut arrives, and he tries to attack the Blood Queen, but he gets thrown away. The Blood Queen then launches an attack that injures everyone. Beta realizes that she is increasing her power by taking their blood. Beta then tries to attack the queen, but she somehow takes control of the possessed blood in the members of Shadow Garden, and they start to transform. Just then, Claire's possession gets stronger, and we then see Claire in a memory where she wakes up in a hospital. The doctor mentions that she shouldn't worry about the possession as she was cured by him a long time ago. Claire wonders what she's talking about, and the doctor mentions that Claire has both the blood of the possessed and vampire. They are trying to adapt to her body, but she can't control it, and that's why it's going berserk. The doctor tells her that she will help her, and a mark appears on Claire's hand. The doctor tells her that this will help her control the power, and reveals her identity as Aurora, and the person she was referring to was Shadow. Claire is surprised to hear this, and the memory shatters. Back to the real world, Beta sees Aurora, and wonders what happened to Claire. Aurora explains that her true appearance is more convenient for her, and Beta realizes that Aurora has taken control of Claire's body. Aurora then loosens up a bit, and goes in to fight the Blood Queen. She then stops the attack of the Blood Queen, and fires it back at her, cutting her in half. They both launch fierce attacks, and everyone is amazed at their power. Aurora attempts to use her ultimate move to finish off the Blood Queen, but realizes that Claire's body is not strong enough for it. She tells Beta that she was only buying some time for Shadow to get here. Shadow then enters the scene, making a grand entrance, and he has picked all the gold coins using his slime suit. The Blood Queen attacks Shadow, and he counters with his own slime attack, but he's not moving from his place. Beta thinks that Shadow is protecting them since they are all injured, and Shadow mentions that he can't afford to lose a single one. Beta can't believe that Lord Shadow cares for them so much. However, the gold digger was referring to his gold coins, which are being destroyed by the Blood Queen's attacks. Shadow then closes in on the Blood Queen, and they engage in a fierce battle. Everyone is amazed at their spectacular fight, and Shadow decides to end this fight with his finishing move. However, this time he uses a recovery atomic move, and his magical energy spreads the entire city, stopping the frenzy. After that, we see that the Blood Queen is defeated, and Beta leaves with her girls. Later, Juggernaut thinks it could be fun to pick a fight with Shadow Garden. The scene then shifts to Skell and Poe at a train station, feeling disappointed that they couldn't lose their V-cards. Goldie and Quinn are also there, disappointed in their loss, but grateful to be alive. Claire bids farewell to Marie, and Cid thinks that ghouls, vampires, and the possessed are just different names for magic overload. Curing them is simple, but some states can't be cured. He recalls Claire talking to herself about special powers, and the mark she has in her hand. He thinks she has a bad case of delusion, but thinks that everyone should walk down this path on their own. Back in the present, Claire tells Cid about the special powers rooted in her left hand, and she needs to solve its mystery. He assures her that she'll be fine, and he will always support her, making her happy. As they head back to their home, Claire asks Cid if he knows about Shadow, and he mentions that he is the guy who burned down their school. Claire drops the subject, and Cid thinks that her sister has all kinds of trials ahead of her, which she'll have to face. He then reflects on the recent events, realizing he gathered only 500 gold coins instead of 3,000 due to unexpected setbacks. Although this is not enough to support him for a lifetime, he thinks that he can always return to the Lawless city, which he now sees as his piggy bank. The scene shifts to Cid boarding a train, and he transforms into Shadow, prepared to meet someone who has called for him, and it's Yukime. After that, we see some bandits looting a train carrying Mitsugoshi goods, and they want to stop Mitsugoshi as they have been growing like crazy. One of the bandits tears the clothes of one of the girls, and reveals that their boss is Garter, who is a respectable man and serves as the president of the major corporate alliance. However, the girl was just trolling him, and Shadow Garden appears. The girls change into their slime outfit, and reveal themselves as members of the Shadow Garden. They engage the bandits, and kill them all. Alpha believes that after this incident people connected to the cult should show up, and the war would begin. The scene then cuts to Skell and Poe, who are showing Cid their newly bought Mitsugoshi clothes, and thinks that every girl's eyes would be on them. Cid thinks that Ada must be behind the designs, and thinks that they are running wild using his ideas. Just then he notices that Mitsugoshi logo is peeling off from the clothes, and they realize that it's a fake one. Cid then realizes that all of his outfits were selected by Alpha and the girls, and it's the same as his past life. Initially he thought that this was the common culture in the capital, as he saw people walking around in these suits, but now he realizes that it was all Alpha's doing. They are using his knowledge to increase their market share, and think that the people they are stealing business from must not be happy about it, but it will all end tonight. Later, he changes into a secret agent outfit, and mentions that tonight the world will know his name. After that, he meets with Yukime, and asks her to address him as John Smith from now on. She informs him that Garter is planning to strengthen their measures against Mitsugoshi, so while Mitsugoshi and the Alliance try to destroy each other, they will take everything. She also warns him about the underworld swordsman called Getan who rose above Garter, and is called Sword Devil. She knows this man very well, and mentions that she'll be the one to take him down. As John leaves, he mentions that he will destroy everything, and build it again. After that, we see all the major stores in the capital holding an autumn sale, and Poe and Skell are trying to buy cheap clothes there. Cid thinks that Mitsugoshi has no hope in the future, as they have made enemies with the big corporations. Once the big corporation crush Mitsugoshi, he will crush them, and begin a new corporation. He then plans to invite Alpha and other girls as upper management, and Mitsugoshi will be reborn again under a new name. After that, he notices that the currency bill given to Poe looked different. Poe mentions that it was just put out by the major corporation Alliance, and today's sale is to celebrate its release. Earlier they were using the bill produced by Mitsugoshi, but it could only be used on Mitsugoshi stores. With the release of new bill, they can now use it all over the city. Cid then recalls about telling the girls about a documentary about banks and credit creation when they were kids. He realizes that they used that knowledge to create their own bank, and managed to issue paper currency. Due to their success, other companies have started to copy them, and just then Cid has an idea. He recalls how he once used a copy machine to copy bills, and got scolded by the store owner, but now he can't be stopped as he is an elite secret agent. He gets excited about it and runs off, while Skell and Poe run after him for their money. We then see John Smith explaining to Yukime about this, and mentions that with the concept of credit creation, the scrap of paper which is not even worth a single copper coin is given more value than gold. He then shows her the bills made by Mitsugoshi and the Alliance which are easy to duplicate, and mentions that they are going to make a fortune using counterfeit bills. Yukime then points out that the Alliance's bill is only in circulation in the royal capital, so if they forge them, the authorities will immediately trace them to the source. John can't believe that he didn't think of this, and he asks if this is what she really thinks. Yukime then thinks that John wants the fake bills to be discovered, as this will create panic among the people, and eventually they will start to doubt the value of the paper bill. So, if they step ahead of the game, they can make huge profits, and thinks that John has planned this all along. However, he has no idea what she's talking about. He then plays along, and leaves at the next station. Later, we see Shadow Garden killing a man, and stealing a carriage. Meanwhile, we see Cid having some ramen, and he is thrilled about his new secret identity. We also see him feeding Delta, and wonders what she's doing here. Later, he gives her a piggyback ride, and Delta mentions that he smells like foxes. He tells her that he's been hunting foxes, and she wants to join him, but he turns her down, telling that he hunted all of them. She mentions that she has been hunting bandits, and invites him to join her, but he reminds her that she needs to meet Alpha. She then takes off to meet with Alpha, but she's sad that she didn't get a chance to hunt with Cid, and looks at him with teary eyes. We then see Getan receiving the report from Garter about the death of another member, and this is the fourth incident this month. He thinks that the bandits are not strong enough to handle the Shadow Garden, so he decides to send the elite assassins called the Clovers. We then see Shadow hunting bandits with Delta, but she's just killing all of them on her own, which is making his job to collect the bills easier. As she's about to kill the last one, the bandit recognizes her as her sister Sarah, who was hunted by their father when she got possessed. Delta recognizes that he's her brother Zabra, but kills him anyway, mentioning that she doesn't need a weak brother. Shadow asks if she really had to kill him, and she mentions that weaklings bring shame to their family, besides her father has over 1,000 children. She then mentions that Shadow can go and beat her father, and become the new chief. Then he can have a lot of babies, and they can become the strongest clan. She will get him 100 girls, and she will have 100 of his babies.
What the fuck?
However, Cid being the Jigachad rejects this offer, and they head back home. Later, Garter informs Getan about Zabra's defeat, and suggests stepping back for now. However, Getan asks him to just follow his orders, and summon the rest of the 3 clovers to obtain all the trade secrets of Mitsugoshi. He thinks that Mitsugoshi is stronger than he thought, and realizes that this is why the cult labeled them as a threat. Later, Gamma reports to Alpha that they are succeeding in minimizing the attack against their transport trains, and are dominating the marketplace. The major alliances are also attempting to supply paper money, but it may be more than what they can handle. Alpha mentions that this is just as what they predicted, but they should not take any actions that will reveal Mitsugoshi's connection to Shadow Garden. Nu arrives, and informs about some unwanted guests. Alpha asks Nu to take care of them, but Gamma wants to handle them. Seeing her persistence, Alpha allows her, and asks 2 other girls to accompany her. Meanwhile, we see 3 invaders, who are targeting Gamma. Just then, Gamma appears, and the other 2 girls immediately engage with the invaders. The last one mentions that he's the strongest of the clovers, and attacks Gamma with his powerful move, but to his shock she remains unharmed. Gamma then brings out her slime sword, and attacks him. He realizes that Gamma is fast, but she's a total amateur. He brings out his weapon, and hits her again, but Gamma is still unharmed. She then recalls what Cid had told them when they were kids, where he had asked her to put all her magical energy while attacking, as her stats are incredibly high. Back in the present, she puts all her magic into the sword, and rushes forward. However, she trips down, and her attack misses. She tells him that she's impressed by his trap which made her fall down, and the invader thinks that this crazy girl is too much for him to handle. Gamma tries to attack him again, and he makes a run for it. However, she trips again, but her sword accidentally manages to hit the invader, and he gets killed. Gamma pretends like this was all part of her plan, and this was her special move called self-sacrifice spinning wheel. Later, Getan learns from Garter that the clovers have failed, and he thinks that he should have used one of the named children's, but the cult is running low on resources after the defeat of Xenon and Lutheran. However, this is also a chance for him to show the cult how strong he is, and mentions that he just needs a little more time until his preparations are complete. He then recalls some of his old memories, where we see that he was defeated by the stylish bandit Slayer, and thinks that this time he will get the power. After that, we see that Cid is having a practice match with Alexia, where she beats him easily, and he praises her. Later, we see them having some dumplings, and Cid wonders if her swordsmanship improved because of the change in her mindset or if she figured out something. However, Alexia mentions that she still needs more power, as she couldn't do anything when Rose ran off, and Oriana has lost his king. She thinks how carefree Cid is, and hopes he can remain like that for his whole life. After that, we see John Smith having a ramen, and one of Yukimi's girl informs him that the production is complete. Later, Yukime informs him about their production setup in an abandoned mine, and the plan to transport it temporarily to the Lawless city. After that, they will disguise a distribution channel, and introduce the fake bills to the royal capital of Midgar. She then presents him with a fake and real bill, and wonders if he can spot the fake one. He notices the slight difference in quality of the paper, and points it out to Yukime. She notices the difference, and mentions that the paper with lesser quality is the real one, while John thought that to be the fake. She thinks that she will have to start making them from scratch, but he tells her that no one else will be able to notice that apart from him, and they decide to go ahead with that. She mentions that once more bills are in distribution, the authorities will look for the source, and she is counting on John to deal with them, but asks him to leave Getan to her. She then mentions that Getan took away everything from her, including her mother, friends, and her entire village. It's now her turn to take everything from him, and John agrees, but warns her not to go down the wrong path. Afterwards, we see that Alpha and others have found out about the circulation of fake bills, and wonder how much of this is in circulation. Gamma mentions that it's not much, and the customers who used them were not aware that the bills were fake. The Major Alliance haven't realized this yet, and they are continuing to issue more bills. Alpha asks Gamma to make the Alliance realize this, and mentions that if the citizens find out about this, they will have a crisis on their hands. She asks Gamma to find out where the fake bills are coming from, and wonders who could be behind all this. We then see Getan being informed about the fake bills, and he thinks that the number of banknotes they have in circulation right now already exceeds the total value of the Alliance's assets, which gives them credit, and the same must be true for Mitsugoshi. If the world knows about the fake bills, it will cause a panic, and they will begin to doubt its authenticity, which will cause a collapse of the credit given to the paper money. We then learn that this was also Getan's mission, which was given to him by the cult, and they were also preparing to circulate their own counterfeit paper bills, which would cause the downfall of the Major Alliance and Mitsugoshi. However, this plan wasn't supposed to go into effect until they recovered all the hidden cult assets in the Major Alliance. It will take him time to recover those assets, and he doesn't understand why the cult enacted their plan, as this would cause them to lose a lot of money. The scene then cuts to Rose infiltrating the train carrying the fake bills, along with numbers 664 and 665. They enter the train, and notice that the train has no security, but Rose notices some threads laid out. Just then, numbers 664 and 665 get captured by John's threads, and they try to break free using their slime knife, but the threads are too strong. John introduces himself, and Rose tries to attack him, but John stops her with his thread. He mentions that he knew that Shadow Garden would be the first to figure out his plot, but it's too soon for them to learn about this, and throws them out of the train. Rose tries to go after the train, but 664 stops her, and states that they would fail if they go without a plan. She mentions that they should report this to Gamma for now, and Rose feels pathetic for being so weak. Later, Rose and the girls report the incident to Alpha and Gamma, and they wonder if John is one of the named children. Rose mentions that John is highly skilled, and his power is equal to the 7 shadows. She asks them to let her face him again, but the other girls shut her up, and take her out of the room. Gamma then mentions that she has assigned Zeta to the mission which they had discussed, and it seemed to be going smoothly. Alpha hopes that they could end things quickly, and asks Gamma to send Delta to take care of John. After that, we see John in the money transport train, and Delta enters the train. She tries to attack him, but John stops her using his threads. She attempts to attack him a few more times, but he stops her every time using his threads. Delta then breaks the whole train carriage and attacks him again, but John manages to pin her down. Delta is furious, but just then she smells John, and realizes that he is actually Shadow. After that, Delta tells him that she was on a mission to hunt John Smith, but she can't beat him, and plans to report it to Alpha. John mentions that he's in the middle of a secret mission, so she can't report it to Alpha, and gives her a new random mission to hunt down Juggernaut from the Lawless City. He mentions that he will reward her if she completes the mission successfully, and she takes off. Later, Gamma informs Alpha that they found a part of Delta's clothing in the aftermath of an intense battle, and Alpha is shocked about this news. They conclude that she's dead, and Alpha asks Gamma to continue the search, so that they could at least find the body. Gamma also informs her about the increase of counterfeit bills, and Alpha realizes that John has planned to cause a credit crisis from the start to take everything for himself. Meanwhile, we see two members from the cult, who inform Getan that the cult is worried about suffering huge losses due to the counterfeit bills. They ask Getan to bear the responsibility, and he kills one of the cult members. The other member informs that John Smith is behind these counterfeit bills, and Getan asks Garter to inspect everything going in and out of the royal capital. Garter mentions that it would be difficult, and Getan kills the other cult member. He asks Garter to do whatever is necessary to find the source of the counterfeit bills, and he agrees. The scene then cuts to Iris meeting Alexia, who is carrying some books, and mentions that she's looking into some specialized books that will help her decide to wield her sword in a place where it would matter. Alexia continues to talk, but Iris walks away. Later, we see Beta informing Shadow about the counterfeit bills, and mentions that the royal family will be forced to take action soon. Just then, she sees Shadow making some calculations, and he mentions that this doesn't make any sense, while Beta wonders if she made any mistake in her investigation. She then informs him about Delta, and suspects that she's probably dead, but Shadow mentions that she has just gone somewhere far away. Beta thinks that Shadow is trying to phrase it in a better way, and she wonders if he can take care of John Smith. He mentions that he has other matters to attend, and shows her his notes. Beta can't understand it, and he mentions that it uses 5 different languages which he created, but in reality he used those from his past life. He then gives her the note, and mentions that he will teach her if she can decipher this. Later, we see John in the train, and a girl informs him that they are approaching the Major Alliance checkpoint. After that, we see John break the checkpoint with his threads, and goes right through it. John then encounters Alpha, and they engage in a fierce battle. As they fight, Alpha notices that his movements are familiar, and she realizes that it's Shadow. She is shocked and asks what he has done with Delta. He tells her that he has sent her to a far-off place, and Alpha mistakenly thinks that he had killed her. She wonders if he doesn't need her anymore, and he mentions that she'll understand it when it's over. John tries to bind her with his threads, but she escapes, and continues to attack him using her special mist form. However, she is no match for John, and he blows her away with his special move. Alpha gets defeated, and she's heartbroken. After that, we see John meeting Yukime, and she mentions that they have exchanged almost all of the counterfeit bills for gold. At this point the Major Alliance bank would become empty, and all that is left is to cash out with original bills where the entire public can see them. The people have begun to lose faith in the value of paper money, and they will start to redeem their gold. This will cause the downfall of the Major Alliance, as well as Mitsugoshi. While the government tries to bring down the chaos, they will dispose of all the evidence and vanish without a trace. John mentions that since the amount of currency in circulation has increased due to the fake bills, this will cause inflation, and it will be the perfect time to end it. Yukime is impressed with him, and after that, she shares her past. She lived in a village with her mother, and back then the great hero Shiva had just fallen. The powerful clans were in constant conflicts to take over the hero's crown, and the weaker clans like her Spirit Fox clan were constantly at their mercy. In their quest for survival, they allied with the Great Wolves clan, and eventually had to marry them in order to strengthen their alliance. She was chosen to marry Getan, and they both loved each other, but one day a war broke out between the two great clans. Their village got caught in the crossfire, and it got destroyed. Getan told her that he had made a proposal to others to take these pills which would make them stronger, but her mother refused, and others also followed her. Due to this, he killed her mother, and asked Yukime to pledge loyalty to the cult. Yukime was furious, and she tried to attack him, but he cut her down. After this, Getan became her sworn enemy, and she ended up being a prostitute in the battlefield. Eventually she found herself in Lawless City, and worked hard to climb to the top. Her true object is not to build fortune, but to take revenge on Getan. She then mentions that she will settle this now, and asks John to trust her and wait for her return. Meanwhile, in Lawless City, we see that Delta has destroyed the Black Tower. After that, we see that the shops in the capital are not accepting paper money, and the people are lining up in front of banks to exchange their money. The citizens notice that the major alliance branches are closing down one by one, and think that the banknotes are now just worthless pieces of paper. We then see Garter informing Getan that they haven't found the factory where the counterfeit bills are produced, but they have found out that Yukime is behind all of this. He mentions that one of the carriage of the Snow Fox Corporation was used to transport the gold coins that were exchanged. Just then, Getan hears the sound of some bells, and senses Yukimi's presence. He asks Garter to stop the carriage, and goes to meet up with her. Meanwhile, Alpha is still heartbroken, and thinks that Shadow doesn't need her anymore. Gamma informs her that the major alliance fall is unstoppable, and people are also rushing to their branches to exchange the paper money. If this continues, their banks will become empty soon, and they won't survive the credit collapse. Gamma is hopeful that they can overcome this, but Alpha mentions that it's no use as this was all planned by Shadow, and thinks that he has forsaken them. Just then, Nu arrives, and informs Alpha about Getan's involvement with the cult of Diablos. Nu tells her that he's been planning a credit crisis with the cult, and they were trying to bankrupt Mitsugoshi. Suddenly, Alpha thinks that Shadow must have seen through the cult's plan, and decided to start circulating the counterfeit bills before the cult could execute their plan. Just then, Beta rushes in, and mentions that she has deciphered the code that Shadow gave her with the help of Ada. It says that Shadow has decided to turn traitor, but he has a plan, and to achieve it he must forsake his previous name and print counterfeit bills. The gold coins which have been recovered are kept in the same place where they once helped him rescue his sister. The girls are brought to tears, and think that Shadow did all of this for them. Now that they have the gold, Mitsugoshi will survive this crisis, and cult will no longer have the major alliance on their side, as they will be the only ones to fall. They think that Shadow deliberately built his counterfeit printing operation in a place that they're familiar with, and even marked the location of his vault. Gamma then wonders why he had to kill Delta, but Alpha senses her presence, and mentions that they shouldn't worry about it. She calls upon Delta, and the girls are happy to see her. After that, we see John killing some people, and he mentions that lately he has been busy beating up people who are coming to uncover the secret of the counterfeit bills, but this doesn't bother him, as Yukime told him that she's not doing this for money, which means that he will get to keep all that money for himself. Later, he returns to the hideout, and is shocked to see that all the money has disappeared. The girls working for Yukime inform him that they have lost contact with her, and she had gone to meet Getan. John thinks that Getan must be behind this, and is furious that Getan took his precious money. We then see Getan fighting Yukime, and she has beaten him down. Yukime mentions that she doesn't know what changed Getan, but although he killed her mother, he had once saved their village and her life. She hopes that the man she once knew is still in there somewhere, and bids him farewell, but just then, Getan uses the cult pill and attacks her. The pill increases his strength and returns his eyesight to him, and just as he is about to deliver the finishing blow, John appears and punches him, which sends him flying. He mentions that he came here to retrieve something precious to him, which Getan has stolen from him. Both Getan and Yukime think that John is referring to Yukime, and he engages in a fight with Getan. Getan gets beaten down, and tries to take more pills, but John kicks him in the face. He beats the crap out of Getan, and asks him to talk. Getan thinks that John's power is similar to the guy who took his eyes in the past, and if only he had this kind of power, then things would be different. He tells John that he will leave his precious to him, and points to Yukime. He then goes to Yukime, who is still injured by Getan, and he heals her using his power. Yukime realizes that he was the one who saved her in the past, and thanks him. John thinks that Getan pointed to him in the snow, so he thinks that all the gold must be buried under the snow. We then see that Dark Knights led by Iris are conducting a raid on the major alliance, and see their vaults empty, so they arrest them. Yukime returns, and the girls inquire about John. She tells him that he's gone to perform a proper burial, and thinks that he's such a compassionate man, but in reality he's just a gold digger, who is going to dig for his gold. Yukime then wonders how all the gold was stolen, and just then Alpha appears. She gives her a letter from Get-Tan, and mentions that it was the cult who brainwashed Get-Tan. They are fighting to stop the cult, and Shadow is the one leading them. Mitsugoshi is just a front company for Shadow Garden, and Shadow has been pulling the strings from the beginning. She informs her that they took all the gold coins, and this is how they would survive the credit collapse. This was all part of Shadow's plan, so Yukime is welcome to treat him as a traitor, but Yukime has no such intentions. Alpha then welcomes her to join them, and Yukime is looking forward to doing business with them. Meanwhile, Cid is digging for his gold in the snow along with Delta, but he hasn't found anything. Delta then reminds him that he should do what she says as promised, and he mentions that he will do what is within his capabilities. He then mentions that he'll be out on a journey, and thinks that the girls must be furious with him as he lost the gold. As he leaves, he thinks that time will solve any problem, so he will stay away for a while. He will come back at the end of winter when things gets cooled down, and act like nothing happened. After that, Delta finds something during digging, and when she's about to inform Cid, he's already gone. Some time passes, and we see Skell and Poe visiting Cid, intending to invite him to pick up on older women, but he's not there. They discover 6 VIP class tickets in his room for the Mitsugoshi Hot Spring Land grand opening and wonder how he got his hands on them, as even wealthy individuals can't obtain these special tickets. Thinking about the idea of using the VIP tickets to increase their chances of meeting girls, they decide to go to the Mitsugoshi store and invite the girls there to join them. Nu notices the tickets and takes them inside. She threatens them, insisting they reveal how they acquired these tickets, as they were meant for only a chosen few. Skell and Poe come up with an excuse, mentioning that they got the tickets from Cid, who asked them to invite the Mitsugoshi ladies on a date. Nu suspects that Lord Shadow has conveyed a complex code by sending his schoolmates and wonders about his intentions, prompting her to report it to the 7 Shadows. Following this, we see the 7 Shadows discussing this matter, speculating that Lord Shadow might have a special tactic involving a group date. One of the girls inquires about the hot spring, and Ada explains that it's a relaxation resort complex built around the theme of the legend of Dragon Tears. A flashback reveals Shadow and the girls defeating cult members. One of the cult members informs Shadow that he'll never possess the Dragon Tears, and he realizes something. He instructs the girls to dig the entire region, and 3 days later he leaves for another mission. The girls continue digging, and they discover a hot spring that becomes the foundation for the hot spring land. Back in the present, the girls believe that Shadow was interested in the legend of the dragon, but they didn't sense any dragon magic in that area. They think that they have limited information, so they decide to learn more by going on a date with Shadow. As there are only 3 tickets available for partners, only 3 girls can go on the date. All of them want to go on this date, so they start fighting over the opportunity to join Shadow on the date, and ultimately resort to playing rock paper scissors to determine the lucky participant. The scene then cuts to Zeta, Beta, and Delta meeting Skell and Poe outside the hot spring resorts. The girls notice that Cid isn't there, and they start getting angry. However, Skell and Poe mention that he's just running late, which improves their mood. Skell and Poe plan to go with the lie about Cid being late to stall the girls until they can have their way with them, using their secret weapon, which are the love tips from a dating book written by Count Virgin Boy, who is held as a legend for being a pickup artist. Meanwhile, the girls inform Alpha that Shadow didn't come, but Alpha thinks that there's a possibility that he will, so they should be prepared. The other girls notice that Alpha came looking very good, and just then, Ada mentions that she won't be outdone and uses her new invention. She then pours a special liquid which is a magical attire that can change color and even be see-through, but Alpha restricts her from wearing anything too provocative. After that, we see the girls having a volleyball match in the pool with Skell and Poe, and Skell gets knocked down by Zeta's shot. Meanwhile, Alpha wonders if Shadow just wanted them to take some time off and have some fun since they are constantly battling to save the world. However, she's just speculating, as Shadow's thinking is always above her ability to comprehend. Just then, Ada mentions that she picked up an abnormal magical signature deep underground. We then see Skell and Poe, where Skell wonders if the girls are trying to avoid them since they went to the girls' bath. Poe mentions that, according to the book, this means that they are trying to decide which girl will get which boy, and they need to uphold the tradition of peeking into the girls' bath. Meanwhile, in the girls' bath, the girls think that they're just playing around, and they need to rethink Shadow's real objective. Zeta thinks it should be related to the dragon Tears and tells its story. Once, there lived a princess who rescued a small dragon that had been separated from its family. They became good friends and grew together. One day, a war broke out, and the dragon fought against 100,000 soldiers to protect the princess. However, when he returned, the royal capital was in ruins, and the princess was about to die. The dragon asked her to soar through the skies together with him once more, and a single tear fell from the princess. The dragon, in turn, began to weep uncontrollably, and its hot tears flooded the land, covering the entire kingdom. Later, the princess woke up to a mysterious spring of warm water, filled with the essence of life, but the dragon was nowhere to be seen. Zeta mentions that according to their research this is just a normal hot spring, and just then, we see Skell and Poe trying to peek at the girls' bath, but the protection system installed there sprays something into their eyes. A tear falls from Poe's eyes which causes a magical reaction, and the girls realize that the hot spring is reacting to tears. They make them shed more tears, but the reaction isn't getting any stronger, so they decide to use Beta, who considers herself as an elven princess. They decide to use a special item on her rear, and manage to make Beta cry.
Women.
A tear from Beta drops on the hot spring which causes a huge magical reaction, and a dragon starts to form out of the water. Alpha wonders if Shadow was trying to warn them about this, and they put on their slime suit, but it's a different color so that the public don't recognize them as Shadow Garden. All of them then fight the water dragon, and Alpha lands the final blow which makes golden tears rain down from the sky. They notice that the hot springs have been imbued with magical properties, and it can now improve beauty and health-related issues. The dragon's soul then ascends after wiping out Beta's tears, and Alpha thinks that Shadow must have wanted to rescue the soul of that kind dragon. The girls then pretend that this whole thing was part of their special event, and they sell some limited edition merchandise to celebrate their grand opening. Alpha then thinks that everything worked out well, and thanks Shadow for this day off. Elsewhere, we see that Skell and Poe have completely forgotten what they did today, and they think that in order to become men they lost their memories for today. Some time passes, and we see Cid being served tea by the owner of the inn where he's staying. Her name is Mary, and she's the girl Cid saved in the Lawless city. She tells him that due to the war, the city streets have been destroyed, and mentions that Cid was unlucky to get caught up in all this. Cid then recalls that after leaving the Midgar kingdom, he went on a trip as a journey of self-discovery, as he wasn't sure if continuing what he did was the true meaning of being Eminence in Shadow. After that, we see the owner serving breakfast to number 664 and number 665, who are sitting right beside him. We then see Rose, who has a nightmare, where her father tells her that he will never forgive her, and she wakes up. She thinks that the first castle town was a beautiful place, but even this city couldn't escape the fires of war. Just then, she is called by number 664 and number 665, and learns that number 559 will be leading the mission today. They tell her that, number 559 is the one who beat number 89, and won the right to challenge other numbers. Later at night, they meet with number 559, who tells them that the stronghold fell to Perv's faction 2 days ago, and although it's just a small castle town with little importance, the cult has secretly deployed their most elite force called the Children of Diablos to take it. This means that there is something here, and their mission is to find out what that is. She tells Rose that she requested her to be in this mission personally, as she received her powers directly from Lord Shadow. Rose is then surprised to learn that only she and the 7 shadows have received the power directly from Lord Shadow, while the rest of the girls received their power from the 7 shadows. Number 559 mentions that like her, she too received her power from Lord Shadow himself, but Rose is weak, and she will eliminate anyone who is not worthy of his greatness. Just then, they see the cult members moving to the ruins, and they follow them. They recognize one of the cult leaders, Quadoy the Gale, and see him using a card to activate something. He then calls upon a royalty, and Rose is shocked to see that it's her mother. Quadoy asks her to place her hand on the symbol, and it opens up. They find the ring of the legend which was protected by the hero Freya, and number 559 asks the girls to prepare for battle, which shocks them, as they initially believed it was just an inspection mission. She tells the girls that this ring is the key, and it's crucial that they retrieve it, but she can't reveal any further information. She then goes on to land an attack on Rose's mother, but Rose blocks her attack. Rose asks why she's attacking her mother, but number 559 refrains to tell her anything. The cult members are surprised that they found out their location, but they mock the girls for their internal conflicts, and thank them for bringing Rose to them. Rose's mother begs her to save her, but number 559 punches Rose down, and prepares to engage in battle with the cult members. The scene shifts to Gamma receiving a report about their team engaging in battle with the cult members, and she discovers that Rose unfortunately saw her mother during the encounter. Perv Asshat and Mordred, the ninth seed of rounds, were also absent, and she wonders if this was a trap. She thinks that they have been constantly interfering with their ruin robberies, but Mordred still hasn't shown himself, and he is the person controlling the Oriana Kingdom from the shadows. She also reads the news about Rose's return, which has caused unrest among the citizens. She thinks that since Perv Asshat is busy managing the revolt, the security around Oriana capital has weakened, and this will be a good time to send in their troops. She decides to let the cult have Rose, as this will increase the chance of Perv Asshat and Mordred making a move. She thinks that this is all part of Shadow's plan, and wonders how he plans to end this. We then see Cid, who thinks that currently there is no one left to inherit the Oriana Kingdom's throne, and there is a conflict between Perv and anti-Perv faction. He then reads the news about Rose, and thinks that she would make a perfect candidate to be the ruler, but wonders why she killed her own father. He wonders if she killed her father, so that she could become the supreme ruler, and thinks that he will help her become the ruler. He thinks that Rose will eventually stand against the heroes, and at that time he will step in as the Eminence in the shadow. Meanwhile, a few guards enter the inn, and they try to take everything from Mary in the name of war support. Cid tries to interfere like a typical background character, and gets beaten up by them. He apologizes to Mary for not being able to stop them from taking her money, but she mentions that she used to be a prostitute in the Lawless city, so she is used to dealing with violent customers. She thanks him for saving her, and he takes his leave. Some days later, Cid thinks that he's trying to show Rose as a supreme ruler, but it's getting him nowhere. He recalls that he started by sneaking into a correctional facility where he enjoyed his life as a prisoner, and made a spectacular jailbreak. After that he went to join the volunteer army, and he helped them win from the shadows, but he went a little overboard by giving them powers, and in the end a bunch of old dudes ended up with all the glory. As he's walking, he overhears the guards from earlier talking about a treasure in the ruins. They plan to leave the city after taking everything that they can get their hands on, and just then one of the guards notices Cid, who is casually taking their loot, and kills them all. Meanwhile, Mary thinks that she doesn't have enough money for making it through this month, and thinks that she will have to sell her body again. However, just then she hears a sound at the door, and on reaching outside she discovers a pouch full of money. She catches a glimpse of Shadow, and thinks that he's been watching over her. We then see 559 fighting the first children, and Quadoy can't believe that she fought all of the first children continuously for 3 days, and defeated them all. However, she also lost an arm, and greatly weakened in the process. He is about to torture her, and just then she notices Shadow. Her power gets restored by Shadow, and it even regenerates her arm. Quadoy is shocked to see this, and she instantly kills him with a single slash. After that, Shadow heals number 664 and number 665 as well. She reports to Shadow that number 666 has betrayed them, and due to that the key was stolen. Shadow has no clue what she's talking about, and wonders if someone stole Mitsugoshi's secrets. Just then, he notices a flyer about Rose getting married to Perv Asshat, and gets pissed. He mentions that Rose's betrayal will be punished, and takes off. Number 559 is glad that Shadow agrees with her, but number 664 and number 665 get worried for Rose. On his way, Shadow thinks that Rose killed her father to become the supreme ruler, but doesn't understand why she's getting married. He needs her to become the supreme ruler so that he can maintain his eminence in shadow work. After that, the scene cuts to Lambda arriving in the Oriana Kingdom's capital, and the other Shadow Garden girls wonder if she's there with the reinforcements. Lambda mentions that she's going back right away, and she's just here to confirm about Rose, as her actions put her subordinates in danger. As she was her instructor, she wishes to punish Rose herself, but the girls mention that won't be possible as Lord Shadow has decided to carry out his own judgment for Rose. After that, we see Cid, who's wondering what line he should use when he meets Rose, and is about to infiltrate the palace using his teleportation skill, but just then Epsilon arrives there. She takes him inside the palace with her, and mentions that in this country people with talent towards art are well respected regardless of their race and class. Epsilon then apologizes to Cid for disguising him as her student, as he is her master. As they walk in the hall, she presses down her giant assets onto him, and he detects 99% slime. He realizes that she's constantly adjusting it with magic to make it bounce, and using excessive amounts of effort in this process. Just then, Perv Asshat appears, and she mentions that she'll debut a new piece there today. She hopes it will bring happiness to Rose, but Perv mentions that Rose won't be attending. He wonders about Cid, and Epsilon introduces him as her apprentice. Perv asks if he has a pass to enter, but Epsilon mentions that he's her guest. Perv mentions that they had changed their protocol, but tells her that Cid just needs to play a piece to them to confirm that he's her apprentice. Cid then decides to act as a background character who is good at piano, and decides to give them a good show. He notices many nobles among them, and mentions that he will get vengeance for the blood tax they collected. He starts playing the piano, and everyone is mesmerized by his playing, while Cid uses this opportunity to use his slime ability to steal the possessions of the nobles. After the performance, Perv thinks that he's a musical genius, and asks for his name. Just then Epsilon intervenes, and mentions that they will formally introduce him when he has completed his training. During their conversation, Cid uses his X-ray vision, and notices a ring in Perv's pocket. It's the same ring that the Shadow Garden is after, and he steals it. Afterwards, he tells Epsilon that he wants to take a look around the palace, and just then a maid offers to show him around. She introduces herself as Margaret, and is quite persistent to show Cid around. Cid notices her giant assets, and detects 0% slime content. Later, we see Cid walking with Margaret, and she mentions that it was the best performance she has seen in her entire life. She heard that the noble Earl patron has an eye on him, and if he becomes his personal assistant he would get at least 100 million zeni a year. Another person, Marquis Newwealth, is also interested in him, but his offer would drop to 70 million zeni a year, although he can get fame as Marquis has a broad network connection. Cid thinks about his future musician route, and thinks this might actually work. Margaret then asks him to join her family, and she will make sure that he gets at least 70 million zeni. Cid then asks her about Rose, but she tells him that it's a secret. Since she wants to get closer to Cid, she agrees to tell him, and mentions that Rose is locked up at the top of the West Tower. Cid then expertly ditches her, and tries to get away, but just then a guard confronts him. He's jealous that Cid is getting such good treatment being a musician, and asks him to stay away from Margaret as they are in love, but we find out that he's just a hopeless stalker. As he is lost in his thoughts, Cid sneaks away, and thinks that love comes in all shapes and sizes. We then cut to Rose, who thinks that she managed to save her mother, but her kingdom will become the stage for a clash between the Shadow Garden and the Diablo's cult. Just then, she sees Cid climbing up to meet her, and she runs to hug him. After that, Cid mentions that he snuck in as the apprentice of a pianist, and he wants to talk about her marriage. She tells him that she's going to marry Perv Asshat, and Cid tries to persuade her to change her decision. He mentions that she's the same as him in a way, as she was looked down upon as a fencer, and everyone rejected her. Just like her, no one understood his dream either, and he knows how she feels. She stabbed her fiancé and killed her father to stay true to her way of life, but now she's perverting her way of life by marrying Perv. However, Rose is adamant and asks him to forget about her and find his own happiness. Afterwards, Perv comes to the room, and he wonders if she had a visitor as voices were heard coming out of her room. Rose denies it, and as he tries to touch her, she slaps his hand away. Perv then grabs her by the neck, and asks her to behave as her mother's life depends on it. Cid, who was watching this outside, realizes what's happening, and decides to switch to plan B. He then wonders if the ring he stole from Perv was a wedding ring and thinks that maybe he shouldn't have stolen it. The scene then cuts to number 559 apologizing for her failure in the recent mission, and she mentions that it was all because of Rose. Epsilon states that it's still too soon to declare Rose as a traitor, and mentions that Lord Shadow has taken over this case. He made contact with her today, but he didn't punish her. This must mean that he has something else planned for her, but it's beyond their understanding. She mentions that the only problem is about the ring, which, according to legend, was used to wipe out 100,000 troops, and this time this power will be used to wipe out the Oriana Kingdom. Just then, Cid comes out of the bath, and the girls take good care of him. He then mentions that his business will be taken care of sooner than expected, and Epsilon is surprised that Cid managed to do this on his first day. Cid mentions that it was easy, and number 559 thinks that their lord is amazing. We then see Perv reporting to Mordred and mentions that everything is going according to their plan. Mordred mentions that their authority will become unshakable if they get the power of the Black Rose, and he asks Perv not to get careless. Perv assures him and mentions that the ring will never leave his possession. Mordred mentions that once they're successful, he will be granted a seat in the Knight of Rounds and asks Perv not to make any mistakes. After that, Perv thinks that the key, Rose, and the kingdom are all in his hands. Just then, the queen comes looking for him, and we learn that they are having an affair. The scene then cuts to Shadow Garden attacking one of the cult's hideouts, and Zeta thinks that they can't find the knight beyond men. She notices the item they are looking for is already gone, and this could be the end of Oriana Kingdom. Just then she's attacked by one of the cult members, but she easily kills him, and thinks that everything will go as per Shadow's plan. After that, we see Epsilon playing piano in the palace, and Cid thinks about Rose's situation. He thinks Perv has taken her mother hostage, so he plans to rescue her mother. Just then, Margaret appears, and she was worried when Cid disappeared yesterday. Lately a creepy guard has been stalking her, but he was thrown away from the castle under the accusation of stealing food, which was actually stolen by Cid. As she tries to get more closer to Cid, Epsilon intervenes, and they engage in a verbal fight holding Cid. We then see that Cid has replaced himself with the dummy, and is now playing piano in his shorts. After that, Epsilon tells him that due to Black Rose, Oriana has detested violence, but they adore the arts. Cid mentions that he wants to see the Black Rose, and Epsilon is shocked. She thinks it's too dangerous, but supports his wish, while Cid thinks that she's being way too overdramatic over some flowers. Afterwards Cid goes to find the queen, and he finds her making out with Perv. He thinks that if he tells Rose about this, then her rage will drive her to full awakening as a tyrant. We then see Margaret disrespectfully serving tea to Rose, and Rose thinks that Margaret will never smile at her again, but at least she'll save her mother. Shadow then appears before her, and she wonders if he's here to kill her, but he tells her that he's here to show her the truth. Rose then sees her mother and Perv enjoying themselves, and learns that it was her mother who drugged her father. Also, Rose would have been the one to die first if her father wasn't dead. Rose vomits, and is heartbroken after learning all of this, and she passes out. Rose then wakes up in her room, and she hears piano playing. She sees Cid playing Moonlight Sonata, and asks him to run away with her. He gives her advice on fighting for what matters and disappears, and Rose finds the ring which he left behind. Later, Cid realizes that he lost the ring, and wonders who stole it from him. He thinks that he has done his part, and now it's up to Rose to start a rebellion. As he's about to take a bath, Epsilon offers to wash his back, and Cid thinks that her giant cannons have evolved so much that it could be mistaken for the real thing. He then tells her that he has given her the key, referring to his advice, but Epsilon mistakes it for the actual key. Cid mentions that during Rose's wedding day she will be awakened, and he hopes 3 days should be enough for her to process her grief. We then cut to the wedding day, where people are protesting Rose's marriage, and soldiers are trying to control them. Meanwhile, Perv thinks that he is close to his goal, but he has to face many complications. The king had transferred the ownership of the ring to Rose before he died, and because of this he needs to marry Rose to become the true owner of the ring. He hopes all his hard work will pay off, and he will become the Knight of the Rounds, but as he opens the box, he is shocked to see the ring missing. He starts searching for it, and just then, Mordred contacts him. He tells him that all arrangements have been made, and he's looking forward to seeing him join the Knight of Rounds. Perv starts panicking, and thinks about finding some way to delay the exchange of the rings. During the wedding, when the priest asks if Rose accepts Perv as her husband, she declines, and Perv is shocked. She accuses Perv of being guilty for manipulating her father, defiling her mother and even plotting to overthrow the government. Rose then takes out the ring left by Cid, and Perv is shocked to see the ring with Rose. She puts on the ring, and it gets activated, shocking Rose. The ring broadcast a message left by the king before he died, which mentioned about him being drugged by Perv, and Oriana being under control of an organization. The nobles find out that this video is being broadcasted even outside the capital, and they may be in trouble. The king then mentions that he will leave the country to his daughter Rose, and asks everyone to believe in her. He asks Rose to take care of his kingdom, and ends the message by telling Rose that he loves her. The nobles then start favoring Rose, and Perv is pissed that they turned their back on him. Rose then takes out her sword, and pronounces Perv guilty, while the dumb queen has no idea what's going on. Just then, the decapitated head of Perv falls near her feet, and her head decapitates as well. We then see that it was not Rose, but Mordred who killed them. He uses his key to send out a signal, which activates the Black Rose, and he calls upon the Grand Ruler of the realm, called Ragnarok. It instantly attacks the capital with its beam, but we then see its arm being cut off, and Shadow appears. We then see Alpha receiving a report about the activation of Black Rose, but she believes in Shadow, and thinks that he will take care of it. We then cut to Ragnarok summoning other monsters to attack Oriana, while Mordred is surprised to see that Shadow managed to injure Ragnarok, and wonders who he is. Shadow introduces himself, and the members of Shadow Garden in the marriage hall reveal themselves. The Shadow Garden girls then engages in battle with the monsters, and Shadow asks Rose to get going as she has things which she must accomplish. Shadow then engages in battle with Ragnarok, while Mordred thinks he's a fool to fight Ragnarok. Just then, Beta and Epsilon arrive, and Mordred attacks them with his sword, but they dodge his attack. They mention that everything he's using is just an artifact, including the sword and the armor, and he's just a coward. Mordred attacks them, but Epsilon overpowers his attack, and he wonders if they are also using an artifact. They engage in a fierce battle, while Rose and other Shadow Garden girls kill the monsters in the city. Margaret then finds Rose, and she tries to apologize, but Rose interrupts her, and asks her to lead the citizens to the cellar they have under the castle gardens. She agrees, and refers to her as Queen Rose. We then see Shadow fighting Ragnarok, and thinks that it has insane magic power, but he captures it using his threads. Meanwhile, Rose orders her knights to focus on rescuing the citizens, as Shadow Garden will take care of the monsters. Just then, she sees that Mordred is defeated by Epsilon and Beta. Mordred can't believe he lost to little girls, but mentions that he has Ragnarok, which will kill them all. The girls mention that they're willing to wait for Ragnarok, but asks him to tell the secret of the Black Rose. Since he thinks that Ragnarok will kill them anyway, he decides to tell them the secret. He then explains that outside of their world, there are countless other worlds, and they are in different dimensions. They refer to them as realms, and there are many types of realms, like a realm of fire or ice or a realm possessed by beasts with enormous magic power. These realms revolve around a center point including the realm they live in, but nobody knows what's at the center. Since the worlds are revolving around it occasionally collides, and become connected. Once they studied the ancient layers of their planet, they discovered that before a certain point in time, magic didn't exist in this realm, and it originated when the planet collided with a different realm. Due to this the biosphere changed, and this led to decline of dragons. Those who managed to adapt began to flourish like the humanoid races, but they wondered if they too came from another world, as they are the only species with this much intellect, and managed to thrive. Over the years many things have come into this world from other realms, but some things have also gone to those other realms. There was once an island nation called Atlantis which vanished without a trace, and it most likely went to another realm. The girls wonder if Diablo also came from another realm, but he mentions that Diablo's was from their world. However, the creature that became the base for the demon Diablos was a visitor from a realm, and they called that the first realm. The girls realized that Black Rose is an artificial gate to another realm, and Mordred mentions that Oriana Kingdom once opened that gate by accident, and it destroyed 100,000 Velgaltan soldiers in a single night. The magical creatures continued to spill out of the gate, and the cult rescued them by closing the gate. As a repayment, Rose's royal blood which was high in magic was supposed to be handed to the cult when she was infant, but the king refused it, and this is what led to all this. He tells them that they will be destroyed along with the Oriana Kingdom by Ragnarok, and just then, one of its arms falls down on him. We then see that Shadow has cut down Ragnarok to pieces with his threads, and kills it, while Mordred can't believe that Ragnarok is destroyed. Just then, number 559 appears, and reports that they exterminated all the magical beasts in the area. Meanwhile, Mordred loses it, and goes toward the fallen arm. He manages to combine with it, and goes to fight Shadow, but his attack doesn't have any effect on him. Shadow then kicks his ass into space, and launches his ultimate atomic move. The attack is so powerful that every person on Earth can see the light from his attack, and the Shadow Garden members realize that this is the power of their Lord Shadow. As Shadow comes down, a black hole appears, and as he touches it, he gets sucked into it. We are then shown a different world, and we see Akane Nishino from Season 1, waking up in her bed, and she's trying to go somewhere to save her friends. On her way, she thinks about Cid who was average in everything, and she despised him, but when she looks at the moon, it reminds her of that day and him. She finds her friend's phone, and thinks that she knew that no one would survive even a day after the attack. As she tries to go back, she runs into the same two men who kidnapped her in Season 1, but now they have been turned into cyborgs. They knock her down with a taser, and kidnap her again. They take her to the same warehouse, and after she wakes up, one of the men reveals that their client wants to kill her personally. However, the military guy seems disoriented, as he has a lot of work done on his brain. He keeps thinking about the stylish bandit slayer, and goes to kill her. Just then, Shadow appears, and the military guy attacks him, but he takes him out easily. The other guy asks who he is, and he introduces himself as Shadow. This is where the video ends. Thanks for watching.